Chapter 2232, Purple Soul Strength. Lin Feng walked into Long Night City towards the purple clouds. He seemed to be walking slowly, but actually he was extremely fast. Like the wheels of a carriage, the faster they moved, the slower they looked. Many people couldn't even see him distinctly. There were still many people outside of Jiu Yu's ministry. At that moment, there was a path opened above the black water. There were some people coming out of Jiu Yu's ministry. After a short time, they stopped and looked at the crowd. Today is Jiu Yu's ministry's open house. All the people who have been chosen come here. Many young people walked forwards and up to the 9 gates. The young man who had attacked Lin Feng was with a woman and another man. He said, "We're from the Sword Sect, here to visit Jiu Yu's ministry." "Yes, I recognize you. You don't need a token," said the strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry calmly. The 3 cultivators looked particularly proud. Not many people had such a privilege in Jiu Yu's ministry. Even those who had been selected had to have a token. Those 3 enjoyed a good reputation in Long Night City, especially since they were from the Sword Sect. The other people were mostly young people from other sects and powerful groups in town. Every year, powerful groups chose disciples they sent to Jiu Yu's ministry to benefit from Purple Soul Strength. The majority of those people were at the top of the Huangqi layer. After all, the purpose of Purple Soul Strength was to help them fuse their soul together with the earth and sky, and become great emperors. Behind the crowd, a young man who had messy long hair and beard appeared. Many people looked at him because of that. He looked in the direction of Jiu Yu's ministry. There wasn't only Purple Soul Strength there was also Death Strength. A river made of death energy was there. The Death Strength was quite pure. This group probably controlled Death Strength as well. "Jiu Yu's ministry," whispered Lin Feng. He continued walking forwards. He raised his head and gazed into the distance. The strong cultivator from Jiu Yu's ministry looked at Lin Feng and said, "Which group sent you, Your Excellency? And do you have your token?" Lin Feng shook his head. He looked at a young man, the one who had attacked his soul. The young man sensed that Lin Feng was looking at him. He had a familiar feeling. He was startled. "You're the one who released that thread of soul strength?" Lin Feng said nothing. The young man grunted icily and released his sword intent, staring at Lin Feng. "You initially thought you could come here to sense Purple Soul Strength with a thread of soul? How insolent!" A strong wind started blowing. Lin Feng disappeared. The young man was shocked, and his face stiffened. His sword intent was whistling and moving in every direction. However, someone drew closer and closer to him. He saw messy hair. A hand appeared and grew bigger and bigger. "Piss off!" shouted the young man frantically. Sword lights emerged from his mouth and third eye, and shot towards Lin Feng. However, ice-cold lights emerged from Lin Feng's hair-covered eyes. Death Strength smashed the sword lights and destroyed them. His hand crashed onto the young man's neck. The young man was dumbstruck. "Your Excellency, who are you?" "I'm from the Sword Sect. If you have anything to say, tell me," said the young man. Breaking and snapping sounds arose as fingers closed. Lin Feng held him by the neck even tighter. "When you destroyed my soul, you didn't ask me who I was," said Lin Feng icily. "Be merciful," said someone at that moment. It was a member of Jiu Yu's ministry. All the people who were sent to Jiu Yu's ministry had been carefully selected, and were outstanding. If they died there, how would Jiu Yu's ministry be able to justify themselves? At least, people had to give them face. "It has nothing to do with Jiu Yu's ministry," said Lin Feng. "He's from the Sword Clan. Your Excellency, even though you're very strong, the strong cultivators of the Sword Sect will come and kill you painfully if you do anything to him," said the strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry. "Indeed, I'm from the Sword Sect, Yu Song. If you attack me, my teacher will kill you," said the young man again. Lin Feng turned his head sharply, death qi emerging from his third eye and into the brain of the young man. The man's face turned gray, and death qi surrounded his body. Lin Feng let go of him, and the body fell limply down. He had just killed that outstanding young man of the Sword Sect. Death Dao. The strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry was staring at Lin Feng. He looked wild and unkempt, but he was also terrifyingly strong. He had probably been an emperor for a very long time and practiced death Tao for dozens of years. That was the only explanation to the strong cultivator of Jiao Yu's ministry. "Your Excellency, you're cruel, but your death strength is incredible," said that person, staring at Lin Feng. He was astonished. Lin Feng was probably more than 100 years old. "You killed him." The young man and the young woman who were with him were staring at Lin Feng. Their fellow disciple had just been killed, all because he had destroyed Lin Feng's soul thread. He had been careless. He destroyed that guy's soul thread a moment ago. He was very arrogant because he was a disciple of the sword sect, but this time he wasn't lucky. He died for nothing. "He should have been more discreet," said someone. "Yes, indeed. Why destroy someone's soul thread when you don't know them? It's risky and disrespectful. He wasn't strong enough, so he died. It's absolutely normal. If he hadn't provoked that guy, he wouldn't have died," agreed different people. The cultivation world was vast, but it was better to be discreet sometimes to avoid getting killed. Lin Feng looked at the young man and the young woman with his pitch-black eyes. His eyes were filled with murder, so they didn't say anything. Then Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the member of Jiao Yu's ministry. "Can I go inside and sense the purple cloud?" The strong cultivator of Jiao Yu's ministry was surprised, and glanced at the corpse. Lin Feng hadn't listened to him and had killed the sword sect's disciple anyway. He wasn't supposed to let him in. However, Lin Feng's death strength was incredible, and it looked similar to their own. He was interested and intrigued. "All right, you can come in," said the great emperor calmly. The two sword sect's disciples were astonished, and looked at him icily. They couldn't wait to see the strong cultivators of the sword sect kill him. "I'll let you dispose of the body. The others follow me," said the strong cultivator of Jiao Yu's ministry to the two sword sect disciples, as he entered Jiao Yu's ministry with everybody else. Lin Feng followed. He wanted to sense the purple soul strength. Would it help him fuse his soul together with the earth and sky? Would it help him break through to the Di-Chi layer? Jiao Yu's ministry's people brought the crowd to a vast place with purple clouds everywhere. The purple soul strength rolled around them, and cultivators had an irresistible feeling. They couldn't help but release their souls. As expected, the purple soul strength attracts people's souls. "I wonder if anything will happen," thought Lin Feng. His soul rolled out like other people's souls and moved into the purple clouds. The purple clouds beat at the same pace as their hearts. This is how it feels when your soul fuses together with the earth and sky. It allows you to fuse your soul together with the purple clouds, and then the purple clouds fuse with the earth and sky. Your soul indirectly fuses together with the earth and sky, thought Lin Feng. His soul strength kept penetrating into the purple cloud strength. It really felt as if his soul had fused together with the earth and sky. His soul felt much stronger that way. He could use soul strength and the strength of the earth and sky to carry out attacks this way. Lin Feng also noticed that his soul defense had increased a lot, so even if his soul was attacked, it was difficult to break it. The most important thing was that cultivators needed to make their soul fuse together with the earth and sky if they wanted to understand the great and natural Tao of the earth and sky. It would become part of their strength. Everybody has 3 days to enjoy the purple soul strength. If you fight using soul strength, you'll have to bear the responsibilities yourselves. Jiao Yu's ministry has nothing to do with duels. However, you can't use physical attacks, only soul attacks, said the Jiao Yu's ministry member. The area was vast. Fighting using their souls was a normal thing to do. Besides, many people wanted to use more purple soul strength, so they were definitely going to compete for it. That way, they'd understand the relative principles better. Lin Feng also did his best. He wanted to become a great emperor. He was ready to do his best and use his full strength. However, he didn't know that the diviner was looking for his clone to tell him what he had read in the folder. Chapter 2233, Forbidden Body, No Cultivation Level in the Fortune Shrine. Lin Feng had left 2 clones in the Fortune Shrine. They fused together and he sat down cross-legged in the starlit sky to cultivate. The diviner slowly walked towards him without saying anything. However, Lin Feng's clone opened his eyes and looked at the diviner. "Teacher," he greeted the other. The diviner looked at Lin Feng, trying to calm down. His heart was still pounding. He said to Lin Feng, "I found the folder. I may have some not-so-good news." "Tell me, teacher," replied Lin Feng. Even if he needed years to break through to the Di-Chi layer, it didn't matter as long as he could someday. In the folder, there was only one sentence. "Get ready," the diviner said to him. "All right," Lin Feng nodded. The diviner looked at him and took a deep breath. He said slowly, "Forbidden people have no cultivation level, they can't break through to the Di-Chi layer." Lin Feng was astonished, his heart pounding violently. He pulled a long face. Forbidden people have no cultivation level, they can't break through to the Di-Chi layer. Would he truly never be able to break through to the Di-Chi layer? "Teacher, you said that back then, a great war broke out because of a forbidden person, which means that the cultivator was terrifyingly strong. What is that supposed to mean? That extremely strong cultivator couldn't break through to the Di-Chi layer?" asked Lin Feng. He didn't understand. Why was a person who had a forbidden body not able to break through to the Di-Chi layer? How would he ever be able to kill strong great emperors? Or even holy great emperors as an emperor? And then saints? I don't know either. Life must be difficult as a forbidden person. Maybe you can try and find the answer in your spirit's world? Nobody knows about the former forbidden person. However, he was definitely a terrifying fighter. Rest assured, I don't think anyone or anything can stop you. Lin Feng took a deep breath. Even though the diviner was trying to cheer him up, Lin Feng had the impression his world was collapsing around him. What pressure? What would he do if he wasn't able to break through to the Di-Chi layer? What about his agreement with the Snow Clan? What about the Moon Palace? He wouldn't be able to sort out all those things. "Lin Feng, come with me to the library. I'll show you some spells. Maybe you'll find something suitable for you," the diviner said to him. Lin Feng nodded. The fortune shrine had existed for so many years, they probably had terrifying scriptures. He might learn some interesting things. The diviner turned around and sighed. He hadn't told Lin Feng the full sentence. He had only told him half of it. But he wanted Lin Feng to understand things by himself. What happened there influenced Lin Feng's real body. At that moment, he raised his head and looked at the purple clouds. He looked confused. He said, "I can't break through to the Di-Chi layer, I can't break through to the Di-Chi layer, so how will I practice cultivation?" Many people looked at Lin Feng. What was going on? Why was he saying that? They thought, how old is he? He's so strong, his Tao power is incredible, his comprehension abilities are great. Even if he needs a few years, he should be able to break through to the Di-Chi layer? What's wrong with him? Someone grunted icily. His soul strength turned into a gigantic dragon which absorbed the purple soul strength. Many people's souls were also colliding. However, each time someone moved back. Some people even got injured and recalled their soul strength, after which they sat down cross-legged and closed their eyes to recover. Some people are extremely strong, their soul strength is astonishing. People weren't surprised to see that. Each time people came, they fought over the purple soul strength. It was normal. 3 people's soul strength kept roaring out and absorbing terrifying amounts of purple soul strength. Many people didn't want to take risks, so they stayed away. Lin Feng's soul was a demon shadow. It was slowly becoming bigger. However, at that moment, a terrifying dragon moved towards him and demanded icily, "Piss off." The dragon opened his mouth, he wanting to absorb Lin Feng's soul as well as the purple soul strength. Lin Feng looked at him coldly. His soul turned into a gigantic death demon. He stood up and looked at the enemy with his pitch-black eyes. He looked like an inky black and purple demon giant. A terrifying strength surged towards the man. The dragon roared out, now surrounded by death chi. "I can't break through to the Di-Chi layer, I can't break through to the Di-Chi layer? Even if I have to defeat the gods, I will become a peerless cultivator someday," thought Lin Feng. He was unhappy. Back then, he had done the same thing, finding his own solution to break through to the Huangqi layer. "Die!" shouted the man furiously. The dragon struggled to break free, but his opponent's soul looked desperate. He was going to die. "Spare my life," shouted the cultivator frantically. He was desperate and had lost all his arrogance. but a terrifying strength was converging towards his soul from every direction. The soul dragon turned into death chi and disappeared. He wasn't able to recall his soul into his body. If he managed to do that, Lin Feng wouldn't have been able to finish him so easily. But he had dared act that arrogantly, as people didn't normally dare fight against such people's souls. His soul disappeared, his body turned gray, now a corpse. The crowd knew who he was, a genius from the Wan clan. He had been killed that way, what a pity, especially since he had been selected to participate. Lin Feng didn't know what the others were thinking. His soul roared out and everybody moved back. Death Dao filled the air, and he occupied a majority of the purple cloud territory. Your Excellency, leave some space. Or do you intend to absorb all the purple soul strength alone? Asked someone icily. An endless number of death spears appeared and moved towards the speaker's soul. His face turned deathly pale when he sensed the terrifying death strength. Lin Feng grunted icily. The death strength contained a nihility sword. A horrible shriek rose up. That person's soul was injured, but he managed to recall it into his body. He opened his eyes and looked at Lin Feng's soul with murder in his eyes. Lin Feng ignored him and continued invading the area. Everybody moved away from him. Very quickly, he was almost the only one to benefit from the purple clouds. People opened their eyes one after another and stared at him icily. That guy is going too far. He's the only one benefiting from the purple strength. Insolent bastard. Unpardonable. Swore someone icily. Nobody wanted to let Lin Feng benefit from the purple strength alone, but they couldn't attack using their real bodies. They could only use soul strength. The 9 people hadn't thought someone would be so aggressive and would use all the purple strength for their own benefit. Lin Feng enjoyed it all. People had been forced to recall their strength into their bodies, but what could they do against him? Those people had come thinking it would be an incredible opportunity, but found they were facing such a terrifying cultivator. In the end, the purple strength kept rising to the skies. Lin Feng controlled the purple strength using his soul. It wasn't difficult at all. His soul and the purple strength had easily fused together, and after that, it wasn't difficult at all to make that fusion of soul strength fuse together with the earth and sky. On top of that, he could easily make the whole strength do anything he wanted. This is how it feels when your soul has fused together with the earth and sky. It's a necessary step to become a great emperor, thought Lin Feng, making his soul strength rise high up in the air. The purple soul strength could easily fuse together with the earth and sky, so it gave Lin Feng a good opportunity to experience what it felt like. Everybody was looking at him icily, with murder in their eyes. Back in the ministry, 2 young people went out and bowed before the strong cultivator of Jiao Yu's ministry. Their social statuses were extraordinary. That guy is so filthy, frowned a young woman. But he's also extremely strong, replied one of the 9 strong cultivators. He's really strong indeed. His soul must be terrifyingly strong, agreed the woman. She looked at the sky and said, he hasn't broken through to the Di-Chi layer, and that isn't normal. He should join us. Chapter 2234, Fierce Battle, Join Jiao Yu's Ministry? But what if he can't break through to the Di-Chi layer? Asked the other woman indifferently. She didn't really agree. Even if he can't break through to the Di-Chi layer, it doesn't matter, it can't be harmful for Jiao Yu's ministry. If he manages to break through to the Di-Chi layer, he'll become terrifyingly strong. The young man smiled. Qing Air will need your help here. All right, the girl nodded. Lin Feng was still enjoying the purple soul strength. The purple soul strength was high up in the air and pulsing steadily. The purple soul strength turned into a dragon, then a sword, and then into many other things. It transformed constantly, able to transform into the 10,000 things of creation. A figure appeared in the air. It looked like a death god and roared furiously. Millions of terrifying death spears appeared. The soul attack was terrifyingly powerful. With my strength, I can easily borrow purple soul strength. Actually, in normal circumstances, I should also be able to make my soul fuse together with the earth and sky, but I can't if I don't use purple soul strength. I really don't understand, Lin Feng sighed. He didn't need to try anymore, because he knew that in normal conditions he should have been able to do this a long time before. But he was different from other people. He recalled his soul into his body and opened his eyes. He looked confused. No cultivation level? He couldn't break through to the Di-Chi layer? How could he continue practicing cultivation that way? Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the purple soul strength. Years had already passed. If he couldn't break through to the Di-Chi layer, how would he be able to go to the Snow Clan? Shui Ao had a king-type body and was terrifyingly strong. In 20 years, he would become even scarier. He couldn't win against Shui Ao relying solely on physical strength. He needed to break through. At that moment, Qing Er arrived next to Lin Feng and asked, "How did the purple soul strength feel?" Lin Feng turned around and saw Qing Er. She was smiling widely and looked quite charming. People usually found such women extremely beautiful. However, Lin Feng was used to such women already. He had so many in life. He just said calmly, "I'm done already." He stood up and started walking away. The purple soul strength couldn't help him break through to the Di-Chi layer. Qing Er's beautiful eyes gleamed. She was talking to him and he didn't react at all. "Wait," she shouted. Lin Feng stopped, turned his head and asked, "What do you want?" "There are many geniuses in Jiao Yu's ministry. If you were to join us, you'll definitely break through to the Di-Chi layer," said Qing Er, smiling at him. However, Lin Feng stopped looking at her and resumed walking forwards, saying, "Thank you for the offer," as he continued walking away. Qing Er's smile stiffened, and she glared at Lin Feng's back unhappily. "That guy is really rude, arrogant, and overbearing, but he's only a tiny little emperor. He dares act so arrogantly in front of me." "He, very arrogant indeed," said the young man, smiling thinly while walking up to her. Nobody had thought he wouldn't give face to Jiao Yu's ministry. "You made me go and invite that moron." "How mean," said the woman unhappily. Lin Feng had humiliated her in front of so many people. For someone with such a high social status as hers, it wasn't good. "Forget it. That guy has killed someone from the Sword Sect. He refused our invitation, but when he goes out, he'll be in trouble," said that young man calmly. "We can go and watch." "All right," said Qing Er, nodding agreement. She followed after the young man. Lin Feng sighed. He looked cold and detached, but confused too. When he arrived on the ancient road, some people there looked at him icily. "The Sword Sect. Teacher, that guy killed our fellow disciple even though nobody offended him or said anything to him," said those two disciples who had left earlier, pointing at Lin Feng. Their eyes were filled with murder. Their teacher was wearing a clean white cloak and had a sword in his back. His sword intent filled the air. He was staring at Lin Feng, sword intent even emerging from his eyes. Lin Feng's eyes were pitch black. He had killed that guy even though nobody had said or done anything to him? That guy had destroyed his thread of soul strength, so they hadn't said anything? Of course, Lin Feng ignored them and continued walking away. However, the middle-aged man said to Lin Feng, "Stay here." Lin Feng ignored him and continued walking. "I'm a great emperor. I don't want to bully young people." "Stop now. You have 3 tries," said the middle-aged man calmly. He didn't walk towards Lin Feng, but he sounded ice-cold, and sharp sword energies started gathering around him. Finally, he started walking towards Lin Feng, and several ancient swords appeared in the air. Lin Feng didn't stop though. He continued walking away and completely ignored the man. Behind him, Qing Er and the young man from Jiao Yu's ministry smiled icily. Lin Feng dared act that arrogant in front of a great emperor of the Sword Sect? The Sword Sect was a powerful group, and that teacher had a good reputation in the Sword Sect. He was a great emperor, and few people could compete with him in the Sword Sect. Lin Feng was going to die. The 2 disciples looked at Lin Feng sinisterly, as if they were looking at a dead body. Lin Feng was feeling sad because the diviner had told him he wouldn't be able to break through to the Di-Chi layer. He felt desperate and hopeless. He just let the sword energies surround him and did nothing. The Sword Sect's teacher was astonished, and getting more and more furious. His sword energies kept getting more and more intense, humming as they gathered. Several sharp swords streaked across the sky and shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng continued walking. Around him, Holy Spirit's lights appeared and turned into sword intent. His terrifying sword intent also became more and more intense. At the same time, he also released a terrifying death strength. Sword cultivator. He's a sword cultivator too, remarked the crowd. Interesting. He dared confront a sword cultivator of the Di Qi layer. It didn't seem like he wanted to escape. However, at that moment, the crowd was astonished. A terrifyingly sharp sword attacked him, but didn't pierce through. More holes appeared in his clothes, that was all. What a physical body. Many people's hearts were pounding. The two cultivators of Jiao Yu's ministry were astonished too. That physical strength. He could resist such terrifying attacks. How was that possible? It was a fact though, he had just done it. The middle-aged man grunted coldly. Energies began to hum violently. Sword intent condensed and turned into a gigantic ancient sword. The earth and sky could fuse together with that world. It could attack both a cultivator's body and soul. Lin Feng didn't move. Death Holy Spirits appeared and absorbed death strength. The atmosphere around them became dark. At the same time, a gigantic sword condensed and oppressed the atmosphere around it. The great emperor suddenly felt unsafe. "Die!" shouted that person icily. His sword moved towards Lin Feng. It was like millions of swords were moving towards Lin Feng. At the same time, the death strength descended from the sky, the atmosphere around it distorted and explosive. Lin Feng jumped and moved towards his opponent. He landed in front of him, raising his fist, which was filled with destructive death strength. The great emperor's face stiffened. He shouted defiantly and released a sharp soul sword. However, Lin Feng's fist reached him first, and there was a brutal explosion. Lin Feng's opponent's body and soul exploded instantly. The crowd around was astonished. That guy had just killed a great emperor of the sword sect with one punch? The two cultivators of Jiao Yu's ministry were astonished. How was that possible? Lin Feng continued walking away. He looked furious. The two sword sect's disciples' hearts were pounding. They wanted to leave. However, Lin Feng looked over at them icily, and their souls shook. Lin Feng stamped their souls with death strength. Instantly, their faces turned gray and they collapsed. One blink and they had died. Lin Feng still looked cold and detached. The atmosphere was gray around him, everything in his way seemed to die. People who offended him had to die. Chapter 2235. Chasing Lin Feng left. People watched him leave, still astonished, their hearts pounding. What a strong emperor. One blink and he could kill people. He had even killed a great emperor. His fighting abilities were far better than his cultivation level. The crowd was mainly astonished because Lin Feng had killed the great emperor so easily. He hadn't used any trump card. He had almost killed him without really paying attention. In other words, before the battle even started, he already knew a great emperor couldn't do much against him. Against emperors, a simple glance was enough to kill them. And I just said I hoped he'd become a great emperor. He's just an emperor now, but he's already terrifying, whispered the young man of Jiao Yu's ministry, staring after Lin Feng's figure. He's probably a few hundred years old and he can't level up. That's why he's good at fighting, said Xing Er. She thought that Lin Feng was extremely old. In her eyes, that's why Lin Feng was a strong fighter, but she didn't think he was talented. However, Lin Feng didn't care about what those people thought. He was walking through Long Night City, feeling annoyed. Cultivation was so strange. In the past, he wasn't very strong, but at least his cultivation was normal until he reached the top of the Zunqi layer. Then he was abandoned by the gods, and he couldn't use the cosmic energies of the earth and sky. Now, he was at the top of the Huangqi layer, and he couldn't break through to the Diqi layer. How annoying. It was even worse than the previous time. This time, Lin Feng had the impression he was at a dead end. At the same time, the sword sect learned that Lin Feng had killed a few of their disciples, so they sent some people to chase Lin Feng. In Fortune Shrine, the diviner took Lin Feng to the archive room and said to his clone, "Lin Feng, there aren't only archives from strong cultivators who were from the Fortune Shrine, there are also papers obtained from other strong cultivators. Have a look. However, you are different from other people, you are walking on your own path. You don't practice the same kind of cultivation as normal people. So you can only use other people's knowledge as a reference. Yes, thank you very much, teacher, said Lin Feng nodded. He started checking the different books and folders. The Fortune Shrine had millions of priceless books. In the outside world, powerful groups would be ready to kill for such books. However, Lin Feng was a core disciple of the Fortune Shrine, so he could look as he wished. Lin Feng's clone went through many different books. They had been written by terrifyingly strong cultivators. All the cultivators who had written those books had different ways of practicing cultivation, each had their own ways. Lin Feng had a particularly strong impression when he read some of them. One of them had been written by a Sakyamuni. It said, "In life, there are 8 distresses: birth, age, sickness, death, parting with what we love, meeting with what we hate, unattained aims, and all the ills of the 5 skandhas. Everybody has to go through those things in life. Everybody knows the mental and physical sufferings arising from the full-orbed activities of the skandhas. Even if cultivators are less prone to suffering, they also have to go through such things. They are part of life. And by practicing cultivation, a cultivator can reach enlightenment and attain Buddhahood. The 8 distresses in Buddhism. Nobody can avoid them, thought Lin Feng. Could anyone attain Buddhahood if they understood the 8 distresses? Having to part with someone Lin Feng loved made him suffer. He wasn't with Meng Qing, it made him extremely sad, and now he couldn't break through to the Di-Chi layer. What a nightmare. Understanding the 8 distresses was important, but could Lin Feng understand them? Could he accept and even embrace suffering to achieve Buddhahood? That wasn't his path. He wasn't a Buddhist. He had his own path. Lin Feng continued reading. He found another interesting book. Some people did all they could to overcome all difficulties with an indomitable will, trying to become peerless sword cultivators, to become Buddhas, or to be respected by everyone in the world. However, what if a cultivator made efforts his entire life and realized things were not as hoped? How would they feel? In the book, there was the story of a determined monk. He wanted to become immortal and teach people his entire life. However, a great world war started and people fought everywhere in the world, plunging everyone into an abyss of misery. The monk became furious and started killing and caused rivers of blood to flow. He ended up in contradiction with his own self. In the end, he didn't achieve Buddhahood. He became a demon. In the book, someone had come to greet and learn from the Buddhist monk. In the end, after having gone through innumerable hardships and tribulations, he had managed to become a Buddha. He was exhausted, however. And even worse, after becoming a Buddha, he had realized that things were not as he had hoped. It was all a lie. He hadn't learned from a Buddhist monk, but from a demon. Everything he had done was for the demon. After that, that cultivator had stopped believing in anything or anyone. He had decided to have it his own way, and became a terrifyingly strong murderer. When Lin Feng read those books, he shivered. Those stories were about terrifyingly strong cultivators. He also had the impression that those people could be anyone. However, no matter whether they had become peerless Buddhist cultivators or peerless demon cultivators, in the end, those people had all had an incredible life. Their stories were astounding. To reach the top, it was necessary to go through a lot. Lin Feng's clone didn't stop. He continued reading books. Each time he finished a book, he understood something new. Lin Feng's real body was taking a walk in Long Night City. His death intent had calmed down already. His hair was still covering his sharp and dazzling eyes. Because of the death intent around him, nobody dared get too close. In the distance, some people moved towards him. They were on gigantic swords, and energies were rolling around them. Lin Feng knew that people had been following him the whole time, but he had decided to ignore them. He was in purple clouds, not in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds. If people wanted to kill him here, it wouldn't be easy. Besides, he cared about nothing anymore. He was ready to fight with anyone. Energies surged up, and finally some people on gigantic swords appeared in front of him. When the people in town saw that, they were astonished. People from the sword sect. They've been chasing an emperor? So many strong sword cultivators, and they're all great emperors. What a strong force. Why did they chase that emperor? I don't know. He must be important, otherwise, why would great emperors chase a mere emperor? The crowd asked one another. A strong cultivator of the sword sect shouted, "Your Excellency, stop." An endless amount of sharp sword strength droned angrily around them. "If you don't want to die, piss off," said Lin Feng icily. His voice carried death strength. The sword cultivators of the sword sect retorted icily, "You killed people from the sword sect, and you think you'll be able to leave Long Night City?" The 5 great emperors moved towards Lin Feng at the same time and released even more sword intent. Lin Feng released an endless amount of death intent, his eyes growing colder and colder. He was ready to kill. Millions of death imprints filled the air and floated around him. His death intent made the earth and sky tremble around him. People on the ground who weren't far enough away had the impression they were going to die. An empty space deployment spell appeared under Lin Feng's feet and he disappeared, reappearing in front of a sword cultivator of the sword cultivator. "Great dream of life," said Lin Feng. The sword cultivator started feeling drowsy. However, his formidable sword intent kept him awake. "Die." Death intent descended from the sky and penetrated into his body. Lin Feng released cursing lights through his eyes. Death swords descended from the sky in all directions. "Piss off," shouted that cultivator furiously. Sword energies streaked across the sky. However, Lin Feng didn't care. He raised his fist and condensed sword strength in it, destroying the sword intent easily. Nothing could stop him. The death intent corroded his opponent's life. The millions of death stamps hit him at the same time. He punched his opponent. The great emperor exploded loudly. The other great emperors gathered around him. They wanted to kill him. "This guy is very strong. We need assistance," said one of them, taking out a jade talisman and informing other people. Lin Feng was much stronger than they had expected. He could easily kill sword great emperors. Chapter 2236. Suddenly sword lights split the sky. The other 4 sword great emperors attacked at the same time. Lin Feng flashed away. The atmosphere around him warped as he reappeared in the distance. Sword lights appeared behind him and struck him, but nothing happened. The sword lights couldn't pierce through his defense. A strong wind started blowing. Lin Feng released an incredible amount of wind cosmic energies and moved faster than they could see. The 4 great emperors had all used their jade talismans to call for assistance from the sword sect. After seeing how fast and strong Lin Feng was, they didn't feel confident anymore. They had to join hands, that was certain. Just one against Lin Feng, he could kill them all. But because they were several people and together, Lin Feng thankfully couldn't kill all of them at once. How fast? The great emperors of the sword sect chased after Lin Feng, but they realized he was faster than they were. Besides, the fastest ones didn't dare go out in front alone. They had to stay together. Death intent kept emerging from Lin Feng's eyes. Millions of death stamps floated around him. He looked like a death god. Holy spirit lights condensed around him and turned into a gigantic black death sword. The atmosphere became oppressive. Suddenly, Lin Feng turned around and flashed back towards them. He raised his hand, his gigantic death sword dominating the earth and sky. 2 great emperors were stunned, the death strength bore down on them. They had the impression they were going to suffocate. "Die!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. The millions of death stamps descended from the sky towards those 2 great emperors. "Be careful!" shouted the other 2 frantically. However, it was too late. The death stamps bombarded the 2 men, and they exploded. The 2 other great emperors were stunned. Lin Feng was stronger than them in all aspects. As expected, no ordinary great emperor could compete with him. Blood splashed everywhere. The 2 other great emperors' faces paled. They couldn't defeat Lin Feng. He could defeat them in one strike. When Lin Feng appeared in front of them, they felt chilled to the bone. Death chi surrounded them. Lin Feng was staring at them with his terrifying ice-cold eyes. Lin Feng released more death stamps in waves. The stamps moved towards one of them. his face turned deathly pale and his whole body stiffened. He knew that he couldn't do anything against Lin Feng. He suddenly jumped backwards, but he also looked at Lin Feng's eyes. Death Dao intent descended from the sky and crushed him. He immediately died. "Piss off!" shouted the other sword cultivator desperately. He released as much sword strength as he could. Golden lights crossed over into the space and sliced through the air. The great emperor's sword strength was terrifying. However, he was facing Lin Feng. During the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds, Lin Feng could have already destroyed ordinary great emperors easily. A few years had passed since then. Even though he hadn't leveled up, his Death Dao had already almost reached perfection. With his physical and soul strengths, he was even more terrifying. His eyes had also become even scarier. Now, he could easily destroy great emperors unless they were geniuses. Of course, Lin Feng felt pressured when he faced celestial emperors. Their cultivation was much more stable, especially in terms of soul strength and spells. Right at that moment, a celestial emperor had appeared in the distance, and Lin Feng sensed his terrifying energies. After killing the 2 sword cultivators, Lin Feng turned around without hesitation and fled using short-distance teleportation deployment spells. The people found the scene strange. A celestial emperor from the sword sect was chasing an emperor? Strong cultivators from the sword sect were arriving from every direction, their swords humming furiously. Some people stood proudly in the sky. Amongst them, there were 2 people, Qing Er and the young man from GU Ministry. In front of them was a terrifying cultivator. Even though he didn't release any kind of strength, the aura around him was oppressive. That's the celestial master of the 7 knights, a celestial emperor. He's soon going to become a holy great emperor. Ordinary celestial emperors can't compete with him. According to legends, his Death Dao has reached the last level already, and will soon be at the top of the last level. He can instantly kill countless people with the power of his mind. Surprisingly, he's here. I wonder whether it has something to do with that emperor? Gossiped the crowd on the ground. The celestial master of the 7 knights glanced at the corpses on the ground calmly, but on the inside, he was surprised. He said indifferently, "That cultivator's Death Dao is terrifying. He's only an emperor, but he can kill great emperors this easily. He's a terrifying genius. But he's very old, and still an emperor. He's probably been an emperor for hundreds of years," said Qing Er. "An emperor is an emperor. No matter how long he's been an emperor, his understanding of cultivation is incredible, especially his understanding of Dao. Many people fail to understand Dao properly. Look at other emperors at the top of the Huangqi layer. How is their understanding of Dao power usually?" replied the celestial master of the 7 knights calmly. Qing Er remained silent. Outside of Long Night City, Lin Feng had re-entered the gloomy forest. He released a special qi around him, the qi of his spirit's world. In his spirit's world, his soul could fuse together with the earth and sky easily. My soul can't fuse together with the earth and sky in the outside world, but it can in my spirit's world. However, I want to do things properly and become a real great emperor, thought Lin Feng. He forgot that a bunch of terrifying cultivators were chasing him. Suddenly, he jumped onto a mountain and stopped breathing. It was like he had disappeared suddenly. After a short time, the strong sword cultivators arrived and inspected the area, but found nothing at all. His qi had simply disappeared from there. The strong cultivators were stunned. They glanced around and started destroying some mountains nearby. However, they couldn't see Lin Feng. After that, more and more strong cultivators arrived, but they didn't find Lin Feng either. He ran away? The cultivators were shocked. So many strong cultivators and still he had escaped? However, had Lin Feng really escaped? He didn't want to escape, he wanted to break through to the Di-Chi layer. In his spirit's world, Lin Feng was seated cross-legged. He released his soul. It could easily fuse together with the earth and sky here. In his spirit's world, if such a concept existed, he would have become a great emperor. However, such a thing didn't exist in his spirit's world. Lin Feng didn't feel any different. I made this world. There are cosmic energies. In the past, I could use the cosmic energies of the outside world, and I could use the cosmic energies here too. And now I can make my soul fuse together with the earth and sky of my spirit's world easily, but I can't become a great emperor. Lin Feng raised his head and sighed. In this world, there are no emotions or feelings like in the real world. It's not complete. This world improves as I level up, as I become stronger, as I progress in my studies of cultivation. Maybe someday, this world will be complete when I reach the maximum level on the path of cultivation, just like the man who achieved Buddhahood and in the end turned into a demon. When conditions are ripe, success is naturally achieved. Maybe someday my soul will be this world. Maybe then, in the twinkling of an eye with the power of my mind, I'll be able to change everything in this world. Lin Feng's eyes twinkled as if he had suddenly understood something. Chapter 2237. Fighting against a celestial emperor in his spirit's world, Lin Feng calmed down. I can't break through to the Di-Chi layer because I am not ready. My understanding is deficient and my state of mind as well. I am too irritable and impatient. I'll level up when it's time. He calmed himself down. To become a peerless Buddha and attain Buddhahood, a Buddha had to go through the 8 distresses and understand reincarnation. They had to understand these things to become a Buddha. They had to understand Buddha strength and purify people. They had to teach other people too. If a Buddha could become a peerless cultivator, Lin Feng could too, right? His path was different. He had his own destiny. In the fortune shrine, in the archive room, Lin Feng's clone was holding a book. He put it down, took a deep breath, and said to the diviner calmly, "Teacher, I know what to do." "Oh, that's great," replied the diviner. When he saw that Lin Feng had calmed down, he smiled. "Your cultivation levels are different from other people. If you can't break through to the Di-Chi layer, maybe you'll find another way." Lin Feng remained silent. He looked at the diviner in a meaningful way and nodded. There were still many strong cultivators where Lin Feng was. They kept destroying everything around them, looking for Lin Feng. The celestial emperor was there, proudly standing on sword intent in the air. Lin Feng's qi had suddenly disappeared from this area. He was hiding his qi, but no matter what, they were going to find him. The celestial emperor suddenly gazed into the distance. A thread of qi appeared and suddenly, sword lights emerged from his eyes. That person had reappeared. He was hiding really well. The sword sect watched Lin Feng. This guy probably had a treasure which allowed him to hide, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to hide so well. People moved, sword strength descended from the sky. It was terrifying. "You're the one who killed people of my sect, the sword sect?" asked the celestial emperor coldly. Lin Feng didn't reply. He glanced around, counting many sword great emperors. He said calmly, "Your sword cultivators are too weak. The great emperors of your sect can't compete with me. I'll give you one opportunity now. You and me, we fight one-on-one. What do you think?" How arrogant! When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they were astonished. He had challenged a celestial emperor. How humiliating! This outsider was just too arrogant. The celestial emperor looked amused as he stared at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was arrogant. It was the first time that he had heard of an emperor challenging a celestial emperor. He waved, and the great emperors around Lin Feng moved away and gave them space. The celestial emperor walked towards Lin Feng and said solemnly, "You killed 5 of my great emperors. I'll kill you." Lin Feng released earth and demon cosmic energies. He wanted to see how strong a celestial emperor could be in a battle. That way, he would also be able to see how strong he could be with the strength of the Huangqi layer. Would he ever be able to, as an emperor, kill celestial emperors easily, like he had killed great emperors? This celestial emperor was extremely strong. If Lin Feng managed to resist him, it would mean that he was able to fight against celestial emperors in general. However, Lin Feng couldn't afford to be careless. He had to focus on defense rather than offense. Demon and earth cosmic energies were perfect for defense. "Your cosmic energies are not bad, but do you think you can resist my attacks that way?" said the celestial emperor icily when he saw Lin Feng's demon and earth cosmic energies fill the air. "You, a celestial emperor, are fighting against me, an emperor, and you seem so proud," said Lin Feng mockingly. His opponent looked surprised, but then he smiled indifferently. Indeed. As a celestial emperor, fighting against you, a tiny little emperor, is nothing glorious. However, I will kill you mercilessly. Are you ready? Attack, replied Lin Feng calmly. The celestial emperor nodded. He released strength in waves and roared loudly. His energies turned into ancient swords. The celestial emperor remained motionless, as if the earth and sky were attacking, not him. An incredible amount of strength turned into a deadly gigantic sword. Lin Feng felt oppressed and threatened. That gigantic sword was also oppressing his soul, not just his physical body. Great emperors' souls have fused together with the earth and sky. He's a celestial emperor, so his soul and the earth and sky are really in symbiosis. It's like he isn't the one who is oppressing me or my soul, it's like it is the earth and sky. However, I know it's his soul strength which has fused together with the earth and sky, thought Lin Feng. The atmosphere around him turned into swords and moved towards him. Could Lin Feng block such an attack? Lin Feng waved his hands and ancient words appeared around him, resonating at the same pace as the earth and sky. He released a terrifying sword intent, but it was useless. His energies were destroyed by the gigantic sword. Die! A massive amount of strength filled the air. Lin Feng raised his fist in an ancient punch. It contained an incredible amount of strength. He attacked the gigantic sword continuously, but it continued moving forwards. Lin Feng's sword chi continued surging out from him. How strong! Thought Lin Feng. He continued punching the gigantic sword and finally, the gigantic sword stopped 3 chi in front of him and broke. A strong wind pushed Lin Feng back and made him step back 3 times. He was staring at the celestial emperor. He sensed the celestial emperor's strength and indeed, a great emperor couldn't compete with a celestial emperor. Besides, it was just the beginning. Sword strength continued condensing in the air. Suddenly, there were many swords around, and all of them were dangerous. Kill! Shouted the celestial emperor icily. The gigantic swords descended from the sky and moved towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's chi rolled around him. It looked ancient and immortal. He used an ancient punch again, and millions of fists appeared in the air. Space was riddled with gaping wounds. Humph! The celestial emperor grunted coldly when he saw that Lin Feng could block his attacks. He was surprised. His hands streaked across the sky, sword trails appeared in the sky behind it. It looked like the edge of the horizon. Lin Feng paid attention. His punches all disappeared. Lin Feng knew that if he used his physical strength to stop the attack, he was going to get critically injured. Am I really unable to resist a celestial emperor? He wondered. Actually, he could resist celestial emperors, but the celestial emperor he was facing was extremely strong. Ordinary celestial emperors couldn't compete with him. There was a huge difference between ordinary celestial emperors and his opponent. He condensed Holy Spirit swords and finally their energies collided. However, the celestial emperor continued releasing more sword attacks, which streaked across the sky. He could release sword attacks instantly. At the T&D level of a celestial emperor, many powerful spells, skills, and techniques could be carried out by fusing the soul together with the earth and sky. Using the power of one's godly awareness, one could carry out attacks in the twinkling of an eye. Lin Feng's cosmic energies turned into empty space cosmic energies which then turned into a curtain of light. The cosmic energies kept changing and allowed him to block some attacks. Around the celestial emperor, the sword sect looked calm and serene. Nobody intended to attack, they were just watching the battle. They were convinced that Lin Feng was going to die any time now. He couldn't escape, and he couldn't defeat the celestial emperor. The celestial emperor looked at Lin Feng mockingly. He disappeared from where he was and turned into a beam of light. He raised his hand, and sword lights pierced towards Lin Feng. His sword lights looked like a rainbow, and the sun shone upon his attack. It was an incredible thing to see. Chapter 2237-2, Sky Palace. The blood moon in the sky exploded. Lin Feng stared at the sky, shaking. A terrifying chi filled the air. It was a terrifying saint's weapon. There were sublevels within saints and saints' weapons. There were half-saints, not very familiar with that cultivation level, but they were saints already. Then, there were low-level saints, high-level saints, and peerless saints. Weapons were divided into low-level saints' weapons, medium-level saints' weapons, high-level saints' weapons, and peerless saints' weapons. Saint levels and saints' weapon levels were similar, but a low-level saint's body was much more powerful than a low-level saint's weapon, which meant that when a low-level saint was attacked by a low-level saint's weapon, they didn't need to worry. High-level saints' bodies were much more powerful than medium-level saints' weapons. And peerless saints could be injured only by peerless saints' weapons. In addition, there was a huge, gigantic difference between all those levels. The great demon halberd of desolation had destroyed the moon in the sky, which meant it was a terrifying saint's weapon. Let's go and see. Lin Feng and the others moved towards the terrifying qi. After crossing a curtain of ice-cold qi, Lin Feng and the others saw the great demon halberd of desolation. There was an ancient battle stage before them, and the great demon halberd of desolation was stuck into it. There was a dead demon king. He had been cut by the axe of the halberd. It was daunting to see. The great demon halberd of desolation was radiating a terrifying demon qi which seemed like it was going to destroy the very air they breathed. The high priest of the celestial sound shrine stood on the battle stage and said, "Who killed that cultivator with you, great demon halberd of desolation? Who even managed to seal you, great demon halberd of desolation, for such a long time? You contain grief and betrayal qi. Is it because the one who was killed using you is your real master?" Grief and betrayal? Lin Feng and the others were stupefied. They felt the qi of the great demon halberd of desolation carefully. As expected, it really did contain some grief qi. Lin Feng looked at the high priest. He was right. The one who had been killed by the great demon halberd of desolation was its master, but that meant the one who had killed him was even more terrifying. The high priest of the celestial sound shrine took a step forwards and terrifying soundwave strength filled the air. Lin Feng and the others sensed the invisible and intangible power. A force carried Lin Feng and the others away. The high priest didn't want to kill them accidentally with his qi. Boom! A terrifying blood-red light moved towards the high priest of the celestial sound shrine. The atmosphere around him turned into a hell filled with blood and darkness. The high priest took another step forwards. The atmosphere was trembling. The buildings around them exploded. The great demon halberd of desolation seemed reluctant. "He's dead already. You should find another master," said the high priest patiently. The weapon began to vibrate. It wrenched free of the corpse and rose up into the air. In the distance, someone was watching. However, when the great demon halberd of desolation passed next to him, he turned into blood fog and disappeared. The great demon halberd of desolation didn't even touch him. "Fearsome," said Lin Feng and the others. They watched the great demon halberd of desolation disappear in the distance. Had the halberd been sealed there for a very long time? "Master, what is the cultivation level of the great demon halberd of desolation and the one who was killed?" Yi Zhiyun asked the high priest. The high priest turned around and looked at Yi Zhiyun. High-level saint's weapon. Yi Zhiyun was astonished. So the one who had been killed was a high-level saint, and the great demon halberd of desolation was a high-level saint's weapon. So, the one who had killed him was a peerless saint? Was he still alive? If he was still alive, was he still in this forbidden territory? In the sky, the moon which had been destroyed reappeared. It contained a terrifying amount of blood-red demon qi, and would illuminate that area forever. After a short time, the whole pit of hell was filled with a corroding demon intent. The blood-red moon contains demon intent and a terrifying corroding strength. When that moon disappears, the door of the pit of hell opens again. "You came in, that was pretty reckless," said the high priest, looking up at the sky. "What?" The fat guy was astonished. Yi Zhiyun frowned. She could already sense the corroding demon qi. "If you're not a saint, you can't resist those corroding energies," said the high priest. He disappeared. In his eyes, Lin Feng and the others were definitely going to die. But there was a woman who knew him in the group, and he didn't want her to die, so he warned them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have cared. That demon lake chi could corrode our bodies, said Yi Zhiyun, pulling a long face. Her life strength surrounded the others. They understood how the demons outside had become demons now. The blood moon was still in the sky. Very quickly, Yi Zhiyun's life lights were being corroded. Are we really going to turn into demons? Said Qi Lianshan, pulling a long face. A thick earth armor appeared around his body. After that, armor appeared around the others as well, but it was useless. The armor was quickly corroded by the demon intent. The blood moon in the sky was getting bigger and bigger. The fat guy was the least resistant. Wounds appeared all over his body and demon intent penetrated into his body through them. He was slowly turning into a demon. No! Shouted the fat guy furiously. He didn't want to die. He had come to explore the mystery of the supreme ancient pit of hell, not to die. Together! Shouted Lin Feng. They made a circle and all of them released life strength. At the same time, evolution life patterns appeared on the ground. It was the first time Lin Feng had used life patterns. He transformed his god chi of the earth and sky into life chi as well, and a great deployment spell surrounded the group. Immortal energy cannot be destroyed. Yi Zhiyun was astonished. She was from the life shrine and she still couldn't release such an incredible life strength. The demon intent in the sky was terrifying. It could easily corrode her life chi. And now it corroded Lin Feng's life deployment spell, but the life strength was so powerful that it recovered quickly. Qi Lianshan kept turning into a demon, and then recovering and reverting to human again. The two antagonistic strengths kept competing. Even though the demon intent was more powerful than the life strength, the reason why it resisted so well was because the life chi contained immortal strength. The fat guy was trembling. He knew that without the immortal life strength, he would die instantly. Hold on and you'll be fine, said Lin Feng grimly. His body was also being corroded by the intent, but thanks to the immortal strength in his body, he recovered faster than the others. The corrosion on his body wasn't even visible. Boom boom boom. Strength streaked across the sky and thunder rumbled. Lin Feng and the others raised their heads and saw a terrifying saint's weapon dash to the skies towards the blood moon. Great demon halberd of desolation. Lin Feng raised his head and saw the great demon halberd of desolation cut towards the blood moon in an explosion of power. The blood moon cracked. The great demon halberd of desolation released a terrifying amount of strength and tried to destroy the moon. The great demon halberd of desolation doesn't like that moon. Why does it keep attacking it? The halberd was a saint's weapon. It was alive. The moon had reappeared and it attacked it again. It also began to hum angrily. Thunder rolled as demonic power surged. Lin Feng and Yi Zhiyun were astonished. A saint's weapon was attacking a moon? Demon chi kept pulsing around them. The blood-red moon kept releasing more and more energies, and a blurry outline appeared within. It was a castle. A peerless cultivator was seated on the palace. He looked like a terrifying demon, holding a blood-red blade, its tip stuck in the ground. Was the moon the demon king's grave? Or his coffin chamber? At that moment, Lin Feng and the others, all the demons and strong cultivators who were in that world could see that scene in the sky. They were all shaking. The Sky Palace, what's the date tonight? When Lin Feng saw that, he was astonished. He remembered that sentence, the Sky Palace. What was the date? Chapter 2238, 10,000 Beast City. Lin Feng was staring at the attack, and suddenly released even more empty space cosmic energies, dazzling golden lights intertwining. The distance between him and the attack seemed much bigger, as if he had appeared in another world. Lin Feng used the great empty space technique which he had obtained from the Fortune Shrine. It was similar to the so close yet so far technique. Of course, with empty space cosmic energies, it was much more powerful than the so close yet so far technique. At a certain cultivation level, it was easy for enemies to break free from the so close yet so far technique, which is why Lin Feng had stopped using it at some point. However, the great empty space technique was from the Fortune Shrine. It was extremely efficient. Of course, against much stronger cultivators, Lin Feng couldn't use it for an extended period of time. An incredible amount of sword lights passed next to Lin Feng, but didn't touch him. Many people frowned when they saw that. Even the Celestial Emperor was startled. That spell was powerful if it had allowed him to dodge the attack. However, he didn't lose hope and continued attacking. A gigantic hand hurtled towards Lin Feng. Sword strength appeared and turned into a cage, trying to imprison Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes twinkled. He couldn't compete with a Celestial Emperor. However, he could try various attacks and see if they could pose a threat to one. Die! Death Dao moved towards his opponent. Millions of death stamps emitted furious droning hums. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with death intent. At the same time, 9 explosive words floated around him, and an ancient chi filled the air. A gigantic sharp sword moved towards his opponent as an evil shadow appeared. "Umph," the Celestial Emperor grunted coldly. He was staring at Lin Feng aggressively. Lin Feng's Dao power had really reached the last level, it seemed. His death intent was powerful. It could even corrode some of his own life. His death stamps and his death swords were also scary attacks. No wonder he could kill ordinary great emperors easily. No emperor could compete with him. "Shadow sword," said the Celestial Emperor icily. Many shadowy swords appeared around him. Lin Feng pulled a long face. He couldn't resist this attack. "Go!" Lin Feng released as much death strength as he could, and then started running away. He understood that he could not defeat this Celestial Emperor. However, when Lin Feng turned around, he also felt unsafe. His heart was pounding. Someone's sword moved towards him. His attacks have already started to regain a natural state. Our teacher's brother is slowly becoming stronger, and he'll soon become a wholly great emperor. Thought a great emperor. He was amazed his teacher's brother was so impressive. However, the most fearsome part was that Lin Feng, a trivial emperor, could hold on so long against him. Just a moment before, Lin Feng's attack had even posed a threat to their teacher's brother. He was insane and he had incredible fighting abilities. Lin Feng broke a talisman and disappeared. Only whistling deployment lights remained behind him. He was gone from their field of vision. Empty space deployment talisman. The sect members were astonished. That was a teleportation empty space deployment talisman. They couldn't see where he had gone. A sword light streaked across the sky. It was initially supposed to attack Lin Feng, but instead it just pierced through nothing. But the Celestial Emperor didn't stop. He continued chasing after Lin Feng. He was a Celestial Emperor. He had to kill Lin Feng now, or he would lose face in the sword sect. Lin Feng moved quickly, breaking several deployment talismans and teleporting himself continuously. He soon disappeared from the Celestial Emperor's field of vision. Behind the Celestial Emperor was a group of great emperors, who continued following him. Behind them, another group of strong cultivators appeared, the strong cultivators from Jiao Yu's ministry. The Celestial Master of the Seven Knights was with a group of strong cultivators, and they quickly caught up with those from the sword sect. However, when they saw that Lin Feng had disappeared, they were stupefied. They continued chasing him until they arrived at the foot of a castle with some strange pillars and stones. There were all sorts of shapes, birds, lions. They all looked lifelike. A terrifying bestial chi emerged from the castle. Great Imperial City. When the Celestial Emperor of the Sword Sect arrived in front of that castle, he stopped chasing Lin Feng. He knew what this place was. They were in the middle of the animal forest, and there were 8 great imperial cities here. Human beings rarely dared go here, including people from Jiao Yu's ministry. They didn't want to offend the animal cities. After a short time, the Celestial Master of the Seven Knights and the others also arrived and stopped. They looked at the city, then at the Sword Sect's Celestial Emperor and asked, "Jian Chen, are you scared of going in to chase him?" Jian Chen was the Sword Sect's Celestial Emperor. He hesitated despite himself. There were many cities in that forest, and in many of them, human beings and beasts lived together, but animals ruled over them. However, in the 8 great imperial cities, human beings were usually in danger. If they died in there, there wasn't anyone able to do anything about it, so the strong cultivators of the Sword Sect didn't dare go inside. These cities were mysterious. According to legends, there was a Peerless cultivator here, the king of the 10,000 beasts. Of course, it was only a legend. Few people knew whether the king of the 10,000 beasts really existed or not. But many people thought that if people said that, it had to be true, especially since Jiao Yu's ministry let them live there. If there hadn't been such a terrifying cultivator, they would not have let them live so close to Long Night City. Jiao Yu's ministry were the rulers in Long Night City. Everybody knew that Jiao Yu's ministry had never fought against this mysterious influential group which was situated in the neighborhood, even though they had lived next to one another for thousands and thousands of years. Of course, maybe the cultivators fought sometimes, but nobody knew about it. Everything was kept secret. Celestial Master of the Seven Knights, are you interested in that cultivator? Why did you chase him up to here as well? Jian Chen asked the Celestial Master of the Seven Knights impolitely. The Celestial Master of the Seven Knights wasn't very friendly. Let's go, said the Celestial Master of the Seven Knights calmly, and then took his group of people into the Animal City. Jian Chen was startled. His sword intent started emitting furious whistling sounds. The sword sect followed too. However, they had wasted time, and finding Lin Feng wouldn't be easy. Actually, Jian Chen had overestimated himself once again. Lin Feng hadn't tried to escape that much, he hadn't changed his face or chi either. He was walking through the animal city slowly. He realized that this animal city was different from other animal realms he had been in before. The bestial chi here was even thicker. It surrounded the whole city. It was like a sealed animal world. The vault of heaven was made of bestial chi here too. It was impossible to break it. Lin Feng was right. The 8 great imperial animal cities were situated in 8 different positions, but they were surrounded by the same thing. There was only one entrance and Lin Feng had gone in from there. Actually, the 8 great imperial animal cities had another name, when considered as an aggregate of cities. They were called 10,000 Beast City. Animals are obstinate and unruly. There's a fierce competition between them. Lin Feng glanced around. The buildings were wrecked, not maintained at all. There were holes everywhere in them. Animals liked having their own territories and expanding. Some beasts around him were walking in their human shapes, some others were in their animal forms, and some of them were even gigantic. At that moment, Lin Feng stopped worrying about not being able to break through to the Di-Chi layer. He tried to cheer himself up. He wanted to understand the world properly. Even though he had his own world, he wanted to understand the outside world. Besides, if he wanted to make his own world perfect, he needed to understand the outside world first. If 20 years weren't enough, then it would take 30 or 40, it didn't matter. Of course, that was the worst case. Chapter 2239. Great Emperor Bai's daughter Lin Feng's hair was still messy, but he didn't look as sad as before. He looked natural and at ease. He had read many books about people who had had great lives, and who had accomplished great things. They had studied a lot and had become terrifying cultivators. Even though Lin Feng had been through a lot in life, from the beginning, he had always succeeded. Everything had gone smoothly in his life except when he was at the top of the Zun Qi layer and hadn't managed to break through to the Huang Qi layer. Even though back then he had seen that as a failure, later on he had solved the problem and succeeded. Ever since then, his journey had been moving forward in a very positive direction. Each time Lin Feng faced a difficulty, it was an opportunity for him to become even more determined. Many beasts had gathered together in front of him. They were close to a mountain near a frozen lake. At the top of the mountain, there were a few extraordinary figures. Those people are descendants of the king of the 10,000 beasts. They have the highest potential to join his territory. A few beasts were talking. There were a few young people up in the air, all of them animals. Some of them were descendants of the great imperial city's leader, the king of the beasts. They were extraordinarily talented and strong. In ice chambers beneath the lake, there were other beautiful women wearing nice clothes. They were protectors, stronger than the younger ones. I came from so far away. Is that how you receive guests? A young man asked calmly. His eyes looked sharp and dazzling, and his arms were crossed on his chest. We told you to piss off, said the bunch of women impolitely. Hee, you're rude, arrogant, and overbearing. You're not like the former protectors, said someone else icily. An ice-cold energy moved towards them. Insolent, said a proud and sharp voice. A dazzling finger moved towards the young man who had just talked. "Come here and we'll see who's arrogant," said the young man aggressively. His voice was sharp and collided against the lake. Ice broke and shattered loudly, audible from far away. At that moment, Lin Feng arrived and looked at the lake. He was surprised. Those young people looked extremely strong. They were all great emperors. Of course, it wasn't easy to know exactly how old they were, but most people in that group were quite strong, and there were many battles taking place around. That lake isn't bad. It's time for me to take a bath, thought Lin Feng. Since he felt more relaxed, he was also in the mood for a bath. His figure flickered. Some people turned around and looked after him in a strange way. They looked amused. What's that guy doing? They wondered. Lin Feng was now above the lake. Didn't he know what that place was? Lin Feng indeed didn't know what that place was. The water was ice cold though, and Lin Feng wanted to have a good bath. He needed to feel clean. The group of women looked at Lin Feng and heard a splash as Lin Feng dove into the water. The women were astonished. Their expressions suddenly changed. They all pulled long faces. However, other people looked extremely amused. Someone dared dive into the water. Some people stood above the lake and remained vigilant and didn't dare go inside. At that moment, Lin Feng was deep in the water and an ice-cold energy surrounded him. He gazed into the distance and was startled to see chambers. In one of them, there was an incredibly beautiful woman in white clothes. She raised her head and looked back at Lin Feng icily. There's another world underwater. Are those the palaces of the beasts who live here? Lin Feng suddenly understood. He had seen a few people around so he hadn't thought too much, but now he understood. Lin Feng moved towards the buildings and looked at the woman, asking, "Your Excellency, is that your chamber?" The woman ignored Lin Feng, just staring at him icily. Lin Feng had the impression he was going to start freezing. At the same time, an explosive voice spread through the air. The woman raised her head and froze the water of the lake. A white layer of ice appeared with a crackle. The ice kept cracking until it broke apart, and the voice disappeared too. "Miss Bai, since you're here, why not come and stay with us?" said someone at that moment. The woman's body turned into an ice-cold beam of light, and she rose up into the water. When Lin Feng saw her leave, he shook his head and resumed his bath. He took out a sword and shaved with it. After a short time, he looked handsome and clean again. His eyes were black, his hair was soft and shiny. Lights surrounded him, and he changed clothes before heading back up to the surface. Above the lake was Miss Bai and many other people. However, the atmosphere wasn't peaceful. At the same time, the celestial master of the seven knights and Qing Er arrived. When Qing Er saw Miss Bai, she looked hopeless. She felt ashamed of being inferior, both in terms of beauty and strength. "Who's that?" whispered Qing Er. Her fellow disciple was next to her and staring at the woman. His heart was pounding. "Great Emperor Bai's daughter," answered the young man, after coming back to his senses. Qing Er frowned. "Great Emperor Bai's daughter? No wonder. Back in the day, Great Emperor Bai was famous. Even the great imperial beasts feared him. However, Great Emperor Bai focused on cultivation. In the end, he hadn't managed to become a saint. He had tried to become one, he had fallen, and left a daughter behind, Bai Yu. She was extremely strong. However, after Great Emperor Bai's death, many people had started provoking her because they wanted to get married to her. For that reason, there were always explosive battles around the lake. Then, Great Emperor Bai had returned and killed many strong cultivators, so people had stopped provoking her. Even though people knew that Great Emperor Bai wasn't the real Great Emperor Bai, they still feared him. Nobody knew what Great Emperor Bai had given to his daughter to protect her. "Everybody, what do you want from me?" asked Great Emperor Bai's daughter, glancing at the crowd icily. The temperature decreased all around when she said that. Miss Bai, before Great Emperor Bai's death, he had been to the territory of the king of the 10,000 Beasts territory, and then returned to become a saint. He became a terrifyingly strong emperor. However, you must know what happened in the territory of the 10,000 Beasts? A young man spoke up at that moment. The crowd was startled. That guy knew? Many people thought that Great Emperor Bai had died because he had been to the king of the 10,000 Beasts territory. It was also why many people kept provoking her. "No comment," said Baiyu icily. "If you want to fight, come." She released a terrifying strength which filled the air. Her snowy white dress fluttered in the wind. She was breathtakingly beautiful as energies filled the air all around her. There was some loud splashing just at that moment. A figure in white clothes emerged from the water. Many people were surprised and looked at him. It was a young man. He looked handsome, and his eyes were dark and dazzling. He looked like a righter of wrongs. But he also looked calm and composed, as if all this had nothing to do with him. A man! Many people were astonished. Apart from Great Emperor Bai, there was a man down below? Huh, I wouldn't have thought you had a boyfriend already. No wonder you keep rejecting us, said someone. Baiyu looked angry though and asked, "Who are you?" Lin Feng looked at Baiyu and answered calmly, "I just wanted to have a bath in the water. I didn't know there was someone down there." "I'm sorry, Mississippi. You're the lunatic who just came into the water?" Baiyu's eyes glittered with ice-cold lights. People around looked surprised. The insane man who had just gone into the water, that insane cultivator? He was surprisingly handsome. Chapter 2240, King of the 10,000 Beasts Holy Town, Perverted and Insane? The celestial master of the 7 knights looked amused. He didn't recognize Lin Feng. Lin Feng had just changed his face and chi again. He looked a bit different. Could it be that one though? The celestial master of the 7 knights didn't recognize Lin Feng, but when he guessed that it might be him, the one who had killed the cultivators from the sword sect, he looked amused. The guy was quite handsome, against all expectations. "Impossible," said Xing Er behind him, shaking her head. She didn't believe that Lin Feng could have changed that much. The young man in front of them looked handsome. She could admit that Lin Feng had displayed an incredible strength during his previous battles, but she couldn't admit that he could be so young and handsome. The young man in front of them looked like her fellow disciple. How could Lin Feng be so strong at the same age? The members of the sword sect looked furious. Not only had he escaped, but he had also gone into Baiyu's chamber. How audacious! According to legends, Great Emperor Bai was the only who had lived in that lake. "Indeed, it's me," Lin Feng replied calmly to Baiyu. He didn't know that Baiyu's chamber was down there. He had thought it was an ordinary lake. Baiyu looked at Lin Feng and then turned around, no longer looking at him. She glanced at a few other young people. She looked extremely arrogant, as if she was the only important one in the world. Someone invaded Miss Bai's chamber and she's not saying anything. She doesn't mind her reputation being tarnished? We've heard that apart from Great Emperor Bai, nobody has ever been in the lake. A young man said to Baiyu mockingly, glancing at Lin Feng indifferently. "That's my own problem." "Now, you people can leave," said Baiyu calmly, controlling herself. "We won't leave until you tell us what happened in King of the 10,000 Beast Town. Besides, we've heard that you were going there soon, is that true?" "If it is, I'll come with you," smiled a young man smiling. He also sounded quite calm. Those people weren't old, but they were all great imperial beasts. They were talented and strong, but they also had self-control. If they were furious though, they could slaughter uncounted numbers of beasts. They could dole out endless amounts of misery and suffering. "Let's see if you're strong enough," said Miss Bai. She didn't even look at the young man talking to her. She looked at her hands, ignoring everyone else. The young man smiled and slowly walked towards her, saying, "I've heard that you have inherited incredible things from Great Imperial City, such as the 13 destructive melodies. Teach me some things, since you have time." The young man released a sharp chi. A pair of golden wings appeared in his hands. The young man's hands streaked across the sky. The wings disappeared and reappeared in front of Baiyu. The golden wings descended towards her, fissures appearing in the air, the wings shredding the air and shaking people's souls. Baiyu released a barely discernible chi. A strange sound spread out as ice appeared around her. The space around her turned into an ice world. In front of Baiyu, a snowy white zither appeared, and she started playing. Ice-cold thunder-like energies moved towards the wings in a flash and destroyed the wings, which instantly vanished. How strong! Such a young great imperial beast. She must be only 100 years old. She's so strong. Lin Feng watched the battle. He looked quite composed. In the past, when he saw such terrifying cultivators, he used to be astonished. These days, he was unmoved, because he was also that strong. However, what was the king of the 10,000 beasts territory? The young man slowly walked towards her, more and more golden wings appeared, cutting the space around them. He could easily crush emperors with such attacks. However, Bai didn't even glance at him. Zither notes spread out. Icebergs appeared and flashed away. They shot towards the young man, but he didn't retreat. He raised his gigantic golden hands and the ice energies crashed against them. Bai didn't stop playing the zither. More and more ice appeared around her and shot towards the young man. Gigantic waves appeared on the lake. Very quickly, the young man's hands felt numb and was shivering. He withdrew to the top of a mountain. He put his hands behind his back, looking angry. He had not been able to get close to her. Miss Bai is extremely strong. Her attacks contain sound waves and invisible and intangible energies which attack people's souls. The young man said icily. The crowd was shaken. They hadn't noticed that Bai's attacks contained energies which attacked people's souls. They had underestimated her. People had to fight against her directly to understand how strong she was. I do want someone to come with me to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory, but you're way too weak, Bai said to the young man calmly. His face stiffened. Bai had humiliated him in front of everybody. So, who could come with you to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory? Asked another young man, standing at the top of another mountain. He must be able to defeat me at the same cultivation level at least, Bai said indifferently. Many people looked glum. At the same level, defeating her? That was easier said than done. She had just displayed her strength. Not many people could compete with her. King of the 10,000 beasts territory? Lin Feng was curious and asked, "Where's the king of the 10,000 beasts territory?" Many people looked at him mockingly, including some great imperial beasts. This guy didn't know about the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. The king of the 10,000 beasts territory is the main territory of the 8 great imperial animal cities. However, nobody has ever seen him. According to legends, he's gone through hundreds of different bodies, and he's had hundreds of lives. His understanding of cultivation is astonishing, Bai said to Lin Feng indifferently. According to legends, if the king of the 10,000 beasts acknowledges you, you will be able to meet him there. I see, so none of you knows what the king of the 10,000 beasts territory actually is, smiled Lin Feng. Bai looked at him strangely and nodded, kind of. She turned around and stopped looking at him. You want to go to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory? Someone asked icily. Jian Chen rose up in the air and oppressed Lin Feng. Lin Feng had escaped once, he had already lost face. Now he was ignoring them again. What was Lin Feng thinking? Indeed, I'm thinking about it, said Lin Feng indifferently. You think you'll have an opportunity to escape? Snarled Jian Chen, releasing a terrifying amount of sword intent towards Lin Feng. An explosive wind also started blowing and surrounded Lin Feng. The space around Lin Feng turned into a sword world. Jian Chen didn't want to give Lin Feng any opportunity to escape. Why would I want to escape? Said Lin Feng calmly. Suddenly, a gigantic ancient cauldron appeared in front of Lin Feng. It contained incredible deployment lights as he activated the ancient cauldron. Jian Chen was startled and grunted icily. He stretched out his hand and the sword whirlwind moved towards Lin Feng. The ancient cauldron started rotating. Lin Feng jumped into it and moved towards the sword's strength. The sword's strength bombarded the cauldron, but it wasn't effective at all. At the same time, a terrifying amount of strength filled the air. Death strength emerged from the ancient cauldron. Coupled with Lin Feng's death Dao, Jian Chen's face suddenly turned gray. His face stiffened into a grimace. You're a celestial emperor and you keep chasing me. Show me how you intend to kill me. Lin Feng understood the 10,000 evolutions cauldron really well. It was a powerful and priceless ancient treasure. Even the great deployment master had never forgotten about it, and had wanted to keep it. Lin Feng's eyes were cold as death. Many different types of soul strength started boiling in the cauldron. Lin Feng was burning them. Die! The cauldron shook violently. Death chi condensed all around. The celestial emperor's soul trembled. His soul had started being absorbed by the cauldron. A terrifying death chi surrounded him. Chapter 2241. Killing Jian Chen's face stiffened in fury. He waved his hands and condensed an endless amount of sword lights, which promptly shot towards the ancient cauldron. Lin Feng was furious too. The souls in the deployment lights in the ancient cauldron were boiling angrily. The ancient cauldron was trembling and clanging wildly. The earth and sky were shaking all around him as well. Even the people around were terrified as they felt the death chi surround them. Jian Chen had the impression something was beating on his chest. He could hear a melody of death in his head and it made his thoughts tremble, while invisible and intangible death strength kept penetrating into his body. On top of that, Lin Feng also released millions of death stamps. And in the cauldron, a whirlwind filled with death energies appeared. Jian Chen was a celestial emperor, a very strong cultivator. He felt pressured but he didn't flinch. Sword intent started burning around him as he flashed forwards. Many gigantic swords shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng had the sensation his soul was being chopped. Jian Chen wanted to attack his soul. "We'll see how long you can survive," Lin Feng said coldly. His soul penetrated into the cauldron, he fused together with it, and then the 10,000 evolutions cauldron started rotating. A terrifying windstorm filled with death strength appeared, hurtling with the cauldron towards Jian Chen. Jian Chen heard 18 funeral bells clanging continuously. The sound waves corroded his life and made his thoughts tremble. How come Dao power can't attack his soul? Wondered Jian Chen. He had the impression his soul was being drained out of his body. The death stamps were getting more and more dangerous. He had the feeling he could die anytime. "Piss off," shouted Jian Chen furiously, releasing 3,000 gigantic swords which pierced through the atmosphere at the same time. Terrifying clanging sounds spread out. The ancient cauldron turned into a beam of light, redirecting itself towards the great emperors who had come with him. Another death peal rang out. A great emperor from the sword sect turned gray, then his soul left his body. He lost control, and the ancient cauldron absorbed the soul. His body turned gray, now only a corpse, and then the cauldron also absorbed the corpse. Horrible shrieks started spreading out continuously. The cauldron was absorbing bodies and souls. Lin Feng's soul was in the 10,000 evolutions cauldron. The cauldron had become his body. He attacked another strong cultivator of the sword sect. That cultivator's face stiffened as he retreated, but Lin Feng didn't give him any chance to escape. The cauldron continued clanging. Death strength surrounded him. Lin Feng's death Dao was extremely effective in the cauldron. It was terrifying. He's reached the top of the last level in terms of Dao. He can kill people instantly with his Dao power, thought the celestial master of the seven knights, watching all this. His heart was pounding. That young man's strength was terrifying. Usually, to understand Dao like Lin Feng did, a cultivator had to have reached the Xingdi layer. On top of that, Lin Feng understood Dao power, and so even great emperors couldn't do anything against him. Even if they used great imperial weapons, they couldn't do much against him. Lin Feng could crush their souls instantly. Jian Chen looked at Lin Feng, his face frozen. It wasn't about feeling humiliated anymore. The problem was that Lin Feng was slaughtering the great emperors of the sword sect. Even worse, Lin Feng was just an emperor, and he was a celestial emperor, but Lin Feng's Dao power was better than his. Each time the ancient cauldron clanged, it corroded his life a little bit. Horrible screams rose continuously. Souls kept being absorbed by Lin Feng's 10,000 evolutions cauldron and turned into the cauldron's strength. When Lin Feng activated the soul deployment marks, the 10,000 evolutions cauldron's power was multiplied. Jian Chen condensed sword strength, but didn't manage to break the cauldron. It was like a very high-level great imperial weapon. When the cauldron finished killing all the strong cultivators of sword sect, it zoomed towards Jian Chen. He couldn't break the cauldron, he couldn't do anything against it. He condensed more sword strength in the form of a whirlwind. His figure disappeared into all the energies. The death whirlwind also surrounded him. Dazzling sword lights filled the air. Jian Qin had turned into a sword. He stabbed into the cauldron. Lin Feng promptly started crushing his physical body. Lin Feng laughed on the inside. Jian Qin was courting death. A mysterious qi filled the air and surrounded Lin Feng's physical body, which disappeared. The cauldron trembled as a massive amount of explosive energy filled the air again. The strength smashed into the cauldron, which crashed down onto the waters of the lake. At the same time, the 10,000 evolutions cauldron shone brightly. Millions of death stamps emerged and attacked the terrifying sword, which turned black. Many people were looking at the cauldron in the water, trying to see what was going on precisely. Miss Bai's eyes were twinkling, and she jumped into the water. Beneath the water, the ice palaces were getting crushed. The gigantic cauldron was rotating and crushing everything in its way. Within the cauldron, the gigantic sword turned into millions of swords and struck at the deployment marks inside. It wanted to break the cauldron. However, nobody knew who had made the cauldron, not even Lin Feng, but the deployment marks inside were terrifying. It was almost impossible to destroy them. No matter how many sword attacks Jian Qin used, he couldn't break them, and on top of that the death stamps kept attacking him. He started to despair. Jian Qin in sword form finally realized there was something wrong. He had thought he would be able to destroy Lin Feng's soul inside here, but Lin Feng's soul and the cauldron were one already. He couldn't destroy the cauldron, so he couldn't destroy Lin Feng's soul either. Jian Qin couldn't escape anymore. He had the impression he was in a deadly star-studded sky, a world made of death. The sword moved in all directions, but all Jian Qin could see was darkness and deployment marks. In other words, he couldn't see any exit, he couldn't even see Lin Feng's physical body. "Break!" shouted Jian Qin furiously, but it was useless. Death stamps continued attacking his body. The soul strength contained in the cauldron was shining darkly and surrounded his soul, corroding it. Lin Feng was annoyed because even with such attacks, it was extremely difficult to kill a celestial emperor. They belonged to different worlds in terms of strength. However, since he had come into the cauldron, Lin Feng couldn't let him out. He had to take this chance to kill him. Lin Feng hoped he'd be able to fuse Jian Qin's soul together with the cauldron. That way, he'd be able to use it as cauldron strength. The cauldron would be much more terrifying with a celestial emperor's soul. Millions of death stamps continued attacking the sword, whose qi became weaker and weaker. Gradually, Jian Qin's body slowly replaced the sword, but his body was growing transparent and distorted. Jian Qin, a celestial emperor and sword cultivator, was terrified. Was he going to be killed by a trivial and useless emperor? No matter what, Lin Feng wanted to crush him, kill him, and use his soul to make the cauldron more powerful. He was a celestial emperor. So what? Time passed slowly. Jian Qin was becoming weaker and weaker. When he saw the death stamps kept attacking him over and over again, he suddenly felt desperate, hopeless, and miserable. He sighed and said, "I never thought I'd get killed by a trivial emperor today. If your soul stays in the cauldron, if you help me become strong in the future, maybe then you won't feel sad anymore," said Lin Feng coldly, yet aggressively. Jian Qin twitched, but actually nodded. He stopped resisting. The cauldron gradually modified his soul and assimilated it. Chapter 2242. By Yu's thoughts, many buildings in the water had been wrecked by the cauldron. When the cauldron finished modifying and assimilating Jian Qin's soul, Lin Feng's soul moved back into his own body, and he came out of the cauldron. His soul was shaking, he looked weak but his eyes were twinkling. He examined at the 10,000 evolutions cauldron's strength again. Since Lin Feng had obtained the 10,000 evolutions cauldron, he hadn't used it a lot. He had experimented now and then. But the 10,000 evolutions cauldron was a mysterious and priceless treasure. The cauldron's soul was becoming more and more real each time it absorbed a soul, even if it wasn't a very powerful one. Lin Feng hoped someday he'd be able to use the cauldron to fight against terrifying cultivators, so he wouldn't need to bother Qin Shan each time he faced someone dangerous. The godly medicine had helped Qin Shan a lot. He would be able to reclaim his power someday. Lin Feng also needed to find the rebirth scriptures for Qin Shan. That way, he might recover completely. Lin Feng recalled the 10,000 evolutions cauldron, his eyes twinkling. He looked at the cauldron and thought, now, you have a celestial emperor's soul. When it's completely refined and modified, you will become extremely strong. If a celestial emperor attacks me again, it won't be easy for him to defeat me. At that moment, some figures in white clothes landed in front of Lin Feng. The leader of the group was an incredibly beautiful woman in a white short dress. Miss Bai, I'm sorry for having destroyed some of your buildings. That wasn't my purpose at all, as you can imagine. Lin Feng apologized to Bai Yu. After all, the lake was her residence. He really felt sorry. Surprisingly, with the strength of the Huang Qi layer, you killed a celestial emperor of the sword sect from Long Night City. You're extremely strong. Bai Yu replied calmly. I used a treasure, I'm not that strong. I feel ashamed, replied Lin Feng briefly. However, Bai Yu shook her head and said, a celestial emperor could crush an ordinary emperor in the twinkling of an eye. They would just have to think about it. That strong cultivator from the sword sect chased you up to here, which means that you fought before, and you didn't use your cauldron during that previous battle. Even without using your cauldron, you can also kill great emperors from the sword sect, and those people are also strong. Well, yes, maybe, Lin Feng agreed. He didn't have much to say. Miss Bai, you said you wanted someone to come with you to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. May I come with you even though I am a human? Asked Lin Feng. The king of the 10,000 beasts territory seemed to be a legendary and mysterious place. Lin Feng wanted to see what kind of animal world it was. I did say I wanted someone to come with me. But I also said that I would let someone come with me if they could defeat me at the same cultivation level. Even though I'm sure you would be able to defeat me if you were a great emperor, now, you're just an emperor. I won't fight against you with the strength of the Huang Qi layer. Maybe I can defeat you with the strength of the Huang Qi layer. Lin Feng smiled. Bai Yu smiled and said, you can try. That's exactly what I want to do, Lin Feng nodded. He released millions of death stamps, which floated around him. Death Qi invaded the lake and the air, turning the waters black. Everything rotted away within the death strength. A pair of dazzling deployment wings appeared on Lin Feng's back, and deployment lights intertwined. Lin Feng turned into a beam of light and shot towards Bai Yu. Lin Feng landed in front of Bai Yu, raising his fist and punching out. Death stamps moved towards her. However, Bai Yu turned into shadows and evaded lightning fast. She was quick too. She reacts so fast. Thought Lin Feng impressed. He didn't stop moving, releasing overpowering death strength, which formed into a monster. Each time he attacked, it was like a death beast was attacking. Suddenly, the water began to churn. A loud music spread in the air, sound waves moved towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng raised his fist and punched them, crushing everything in his way. His physical strength was incredible, but even so, some sound waves flowed around and towards him. His soul was trembling. He had the impression it was going to explode. That kind of attack was extremely dangerous. Soul attacks always were. Against a soul attack, physical strength was useless, and Bai Yu's music attack was aimed at his soul. If Lin Feng had been an ordinary emperor, he wouldn't withstood a single attack. His soul would have been destroyed instantly. At that moment, Lin Feng had already used lots of soul strength, and it wasn't pleasant. Lin Feng punched out again. 9 words appeared around him and fused together with the water. He roared furiously, his voice carrying cursing strength. Bai Yu's skull started trembling. She used soundwave attacks, so Lin Feng did the same. The water around them was boiling. Lin Feng jumped forwards and teleported himself using empty space strength. Bai Yu continued playing the zither, the sound waves shooting towards him. Lin Feng opened his mouth and released soundwave strength too. Their sound waves collided. The water around them started bursting. Lacerate. Lin Feng released sword intent, and more death strength through his eyes. It penetrated into Bai Yu's eyes. Millions of threads of death stamps besieged her. Her life was slowly being corroded away by Lin Feng's Dao strength. Bai Yu's eyes turned black with astonishment. How could a cultivator of the Huang Qi layer resist her? She was a great emperor. In terms of speed, soul strength, physical strength, cosmic energies, and Tao power, Lin Feng was as strong as her, if not stronger. His Tao strength was incredible. "That's enough," shouted Bai Yu, just as Lin Feng was about to carry out another attack. Lin Feng's figure stopped. Bai Yu wasn't far away from him. He said politely, "Miss Bai? That's enough. I'll take you to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory," she told him. His eyes twinkled, he smiled and said, "All right, thank you for your kindness. Don't thank me. I can't go to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory alone. I'm not strong enough. I just hope I can use you and your strength. Besides, we're only 2 people, that's not enough. We need more people," Bai Yu told him. Lin Feng said, "The young men outside don't seem to be weak." Bai Yu shook her head. "Still not enough. Among them, only one is fairly strong. You could easily kill the others. They just have a good reputation because they were born in powerful families. Actually, in the 8 great imperial animal cities, some people can easily kill them." Lin Feng was surprised, as those great emperors were not weak. "I see. So, why don't you invite those strong people?" suggested Lin Feng. However, Bai Yu looked at him strangely. Lin Feng was surprised and understood something. He smiled and conjectured, "You're worried that you wouldn't be able to control them because they could be stronger than you?" Lin Feng had just fought against Bai Yu, but he guessed that she hadn't used her full strength. She wanted to find someone who was strong, but she was also worried that the person would be too strong. She wanted to keep the situation under control. Lin Feng was strong, but Bai Yu thought that she could control him. She didn't want to fight against people who were truly stronger than her. She wanted to fight people who were slightly weaker than her at most. "Let's go," said Bai Yu, without replying to Lin Feng's question. Lin Feng nodded. When they came out of the water, the crowd noticed that the Celestial Emperor had disappeared. They frowned, especially the Celestial Master of the 7 Knights and the others. Where was Jianchen? Had Lin Feng killed him? Miss Bai came out with him. Does it mean she's not mad that he destroyed some of her buildings? Wondered many people outside. Nobody had dared go into the lake. Those who had dared go inside in the past had been killed by Bai Yu. Chapter 2243. Devouring the Saint Luck. Everybody was convinced that the Saint Luck of those 3 birds was incredible. With it, the chances of becoming saints was really high. "Father, which bird should we chase?" Alma asked Lin Feng. "The one with the fishers," said Lin Feng. Of the 2 other birds, one had teleportation abilities and the other one controlled void strength. Chasing them was too difficult. Even the other strong cultivators knew it'd be difficult to catch them. All the birds were being chased by strong cultivators all around Lin Feng. Their chi was fierce, especially those who were from shrines. They joined hands to chase the birds, so they posed a threat to everyone else. "Stop," said someone coldly. Lights flickered and encircled that gigantic bird. However, the gigantic bird whistled and continued moving forwards, releasing a terrifying explosive empty space strength. The strong cultivators who were chasing didn't give up, they even put more pressure on it in a frenzy. "Its speed is incredible," said Alma. He was already using his maximum speed, moving as fast as lightning, but the bird was so fast, they were only drawing closer slowly. "The members of the Fire Shrine want to chase this bird, too," thought Lin Feng, glancing around. Cheong Jiutian looked cold and detached. Everybody wanted Saint Luck. They all had to use their full strength to chase the bird. "He's not so strong," said a strong cultivator in the group of people from the Fire Shrine. "Yes, we didn't try to get the Saint Luck from the 9 dragons. Since we decided to chase this one, we have to do all we can to get it. And the most difficult is yet to come," said Cheong Jiutian. The Fire Shrine had to get this one. The gigantic bird controls atmosphere-destroying strength too. It's probably related to the Saint Luck he has. "If we capture him, we'll also gain an incredible spell," said Cheong Haiya. The group of people of the fire were on a gigantic fire sword which streaked across the sky at high speed, trailing fire. "Daimon," said the fat guy to Lin Feng at that moment. Lin Feng smiled and said, "Fatty, people from the Soul Shrine want to get that bird too?" "I'm not that interested. If you want him, I can help you," said the fat guy. He felt like he owed Lin Feng, as without Lin Feng he wouldn't have left the supreme ancient pit of hell alive. "All right, help me block the others then," said Lin Feng smiling. "No problem. I'm quite strong," laughed the fat guy. His flesh covered his eyes each time he smiled or laughed. "Mine," said a strong cultivator, stretching out his hands towards the bird. However, when he grabbed the bird, the latter became illusionary and gained altitude. The strong cultivator's face stiffened in surprise. Boom! A strong wind swept away a number of cultivators. "How is that possible?" The one who had just tried to grab the bird looked at his hands, stunned. Those who were chasing the birds were also shocked. Could that bird really break the atmosphere and disappear inside to teleport himself? How to catch him then? Wondered Lin Feng. He was annoyed. Had he chosen the wrong bird? The gigantic bird landed on the peak of a mountain and stopped. It glanced over at the crowd in a sharp way. It looked almost amused and taunting. The strong cultivators who were chasing it also stopped and watched it. Their eyes were glittering. "I'll try," said a strong cultivator, moving forwards. Nobody prevented him from trying. His empty space strength was very strong. He stretched out his hands to catch the bird, but just like a moment before, he caught nothing but air. The strong cultivator was astonished. His face froze. "Crush him," said Xiong Haiya coldly. Fire appeared all around him, and he threw himself at the bird. Chains made of fire appeared all around the bird. The bird looked at him disdainfully, as if the fire was too weak for him. "Getting saint luck and becoming a saint is not easy at all," mused Lin Feng. Alma said, "Father, that bird controls atmosphere-breaking strength. To it, everything is emptiness. Attacking him is useless. Only saints could attack it. But you have a mysterious strength, so you can try and see if your attacks work on him." Indeed, only a terrifying empty space attack could work on the bird, but Lin Feng's strength was different from other people. He controlled God's strength, God Dao. If Alma hadn't reminded Lin Feng about it, he wouldn't have thought about it. After the first man, other people tried, but it was useless. Lin Feng released and condensed God's strength, and flashed forwards. When Xiong Haiya saw that, he grunted coldly, but the bird suddenly couldn't get free from Lin Feng's attack, and started struggling. "Alma!" shouted Lin Feng. "Father!" shouted Alma. "Open your mouth," said Lin Feng. Alma roared. Lin Feng's God's strength pushed the bird into Alma's mouth. A terrifying Saint Luck strength started flowing through Alma's body. His dark scales became dazzling. The others were astonished. Alma had absorbed the Saint Luck. "Go!" whispered Lin Feng. He hadn't thought it would work. Alma roared and spiraled up into the air. A fireball shot at Lin Feng. Alma rose higher, as some fire chains appeared around him and Lin Feng. "Become small, I'll take care of it," shouted Lin Feng. Alma became tiny and went into Lin Feng's arms. He had to protect the Saint Luck. "Be careful, father," said Alma. Lin Feng dodged the attack and released empty space, then moved as fast as lightning. "Daimon, stop!" shouted Xiong Haiya coldly. The strong cultivators of the fire shrine surrounded him. "Fatty!" shouted Lin Feng. The fat guy nodded and shouted furiously. The crowd shook because his voice was too loud. They had the impression their souls were going to explode and the world collapse around them. Even though Lin Feng was prepared, his soul shook too. That fat guy's attacks were powerful and affected him, too. "Enough," said Lin Feng. He still wanted to attack Xiong Haiya, but the fat guy's attack had hit everyone, so he had missed the opportunity to attack. But as the crowd was trembling, Lin Feng struggled and started leaving at his top speed. "Bastard! That black dragon's cultivation level is not strong enough. You made him absorb Saint Luck. It's a waste," shouted some people furiously. But it was useless. Lin Feng had already had Alma absorb the Saint Luck. Many people stopped and looked at the two other birds. Maybe they would have an opportunity there. But the members of the fire shrine didn't want to give up and continued chasing Lin Feng, infuriating him. "Daimon!" shouted Qi Lianshan. He looked at the fat guy and asked, "What's going on?" "Help me!" shouted Lin Feng. Qi Lianshan nodded and flashed forwards, releasing a terrifying strength. The others all had the impression they were stuck in moving sands. Good, said Qi Lianshan happily. Lin Feng was happy some people were helping him. Qi Lianshan, fatty, don't cause trouble, said Qiong Jiutian to those two people coldly. We definitely will cause trouble, said Qi Lianshan. The fat guy shrugged and said, I feel like causing trouble too. Qi Lianshan, fight against Qiong Jiutian. Fatty, block the two others, I'll take care of Qiong Haiya, said Lin Feng. The two people nodded. Qiong Haiya smiled coldly. Daimon was too insolent. Father, should I help? Asked Alma. He wanted to fight too. No need. How are you feeling? Asked Lin Feng. I want to get the Saint Luck of the two other birds. This Saint Luck contains incredible empty space strength. It looks like celestial Tao. It's extremely powerful. You shouldn't have given it to me, said Alma. No problem. Even if you can't become a saint now, you'll have the opportunity in the future. I'm not like you, I don't need Saint Luck, replied Lin Feng. Alma hissed and continued assimilating the Saint Luck. Chapter 2243-2. Name list. Baiyu slowly rose up into the air and landed on the top of a mountain. She glanced around and said slowly, I have made a decision. Apart from me, I will choose 6 other people to bring to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. When Baiyu said that, the young people frowned. One of them smiled and said, So you mean you will let us come with you? Baiyu slowly turned around and looked at Lin Feng, saying, He is one of them. Regarding the 5 others, I have already made up my mind. If you think you can defeat them, then you can come with me. The crowd all looked at Lin Feng coldly. An emperor had been chosen by Baiyu? Baiyu was famous in the great imperial city. She couldn't do things carelessly, and surprisingly, she had chosen Lin Feng. It meant that she acknowledged his strength, that she had fought against him. But those young people were famous in the 8 great imperial cities. They couldn't accept the fact that Lin Feng might be stronger than them, even if he had killed a celestial emperor and so many great emperors, especially since he had used a great imperial weapon. Who are the 5 others? Asked someone without attacking Lin Feng immediately. Qinghai's rock, Baiyu answered indifferently. The crowd was astonished, their faces stiffened. Qinghai's rock? Baiyu had chosen him? They couldn't compete with him, mainly because of his speed. He just had to flap his wings twice or thrice and he could outdistance them extremely quickly without them having the chance to catch up ever. Who else? Heezy's Maharaga, continued Baiyu. The young men's faces stiffened even more. One of them said, Miss Bai, you can't choose such monstrous people, or it won't be beneficial for you. The others just took a deep breath when they heard Baiyu. Heezy's Maharaga was a terrifying cultivator, a monster. His poison could kill celestial emperors. And he was at the very top of the Diqi layer. Heezy's Maharaga was also very old, according to legends at least. Nobody dared get close to him because of his poison. They hadn't though. Miss Bai would choose such people. 3 more people, said another young man to Baiyu. He was going crazy with thwarted ambition. Dark Golden Pupiled King, Zishu's Flood Dragon, Dinua's Sword. Baiyu finished calmly. Everybody around her, humans and beasts alike, was astonished. The people Baiyu had chosen despised the young people who had come here. Those who had come were already considered geniuses in the 8 great imperial animal cities. However, facing the people Baiyu had mentioned, they felt tiny and weak. Qinghai's rock, Heezy's Maharaga, the Dark Golden Pupiled King, Zishu's Flood Dragon, Dinua's Sword. Those 5 people were very strong. People didn't even dare mention their names. Qinghai's rock was the descendant of a terrifying blue-green bird and a great emperor. His speed and attacks were terrifying. Heezy's Maharaga had killed a terrifying celestial emperor in the past with his poison. People were really scared of him. Few people dared offend either of them. Thankfully, they rarely showed up those days because they were trying to break through. The Dark Golden Pupiled King was a descendant of a rock and a dark pupiled king. He was extremely talented with the qualities of both beasts. He was sly, brutal, and terrifying. Zishu's Flood Dragon was a terrifying flood dragon. According to legends, when he was young, He had stolen the blood of the Purple Emptiness Dragon King, which had granted him a terrifying strength. He had real dragon blood. Nobody dared fight against using purely physical attacks. In terms of defense, nobody could compete with him at the same cultivation level. Dinua's sword was the most ordinary of all those people, but he wasn't ordinary. Nobody knew what he was a beast, but he studied the sword with humans. He had studied swords for 1,000 years. People said that his swordsmanship had reached the peak of perfection. He had killed a flood dragon of the same cultivation level. After that, he had become famous in the animal world. Miss Bai was great Emperor Bai's descendant, and even though she was famous, she couldn't compete with those people. She had invited those 5 people and it was dangerous for her. Any one of those 5 people could crush her if they wanted to. Because of those 5 names, the young people who had come felt powerless. When Lin Feng saw those people's reactions, he understood how terrifying those named were. The 5 people Bai Yu had invited could easily kill these young people. They were all at the top of the Di Qi layer, and could easily kill ordinary great emperors. It was thus obvious that Miss Bai wasn't a simple cultivator, otherwise, she wouldn't have dared invite them. Miss Bai, I would feel ashamed of being inferior in front of such people. It's just that this guy is a human and he only has the strength of the Huangqi layer. Why would he go with you? Asked someone at that moment. It was a young man in cyan clothes named Qing Yi. As Bai Yu had said, if one of those young people was stronger than the others, it was him. He had the body of a blue-green bird, and was from the same sect as Qinghai's rock. However, he was much weaker, and would never be able to catch up with him. Despite that, he actually was really strong. If you don't agree, you can fight against him. If you defeat him, you can replace him, said Bai Yu carelessly. Qing Yi was surprised. From the tone of her voice, Qing Yi had the impression she didn't believe he could defeat Lin Feng. He was a genius and he was a great imperial beast, while Lin Feng was merely an emperor. Qing Yi couldn't imagine that, with only the strength of the Huangqi layer, Lin Feng could defeat him. Of course, I don't think you need to fight because apart from me and the 6 other people, I also need 2 substitutes because anything could happen in the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Therefore, I hope we can be 9 people. Qing Yi, you're also on my name list, Bai Yu continued calmly. However, Qing Yi didn't feel happy at all, as being a substitute was nothing glorious. Besides, how could he accept having a lower position than a cultivator of the Huangqi layer? However, Qing Yi accepted coldly. I see that. I feel honored. Bai Yu knew he wasn't happy, considering his tone of speech. But she didn't care and said, since you agree, let's get ready to go. Go where? Asked Qing. Go and see those 5 people, replied Bai Yu. Miss Bai, do you know where they are? Asked Qing. He was surprised. Even if Qinghai's rock and Qing Yi were from the same sect, he didn't know where Qinghai's rock was. The other 4 were also enigmatic. How could they find those people easily? Naturally, replied Bai Yu. She sounded convinced. Miss Bai, isn't there one last spot? Asked the other young people. They didn't feel happy. They had come to Bai Yu, and they wanted to give her some presents. Now they had arrived and she didn't care about them. Those people were all geniuses, but Bai Yu kind of despised them. Yes, my maid, said Bai Yu indifferently. Those people were dumbfounded. No spot for them. We'll see if relying on your sense of judgment was a good idea, Miss Bai, said one of them, staring at Lin Feng coldly. He was furious. He released explosive bestial qi, which surrounded Lin Feng. His hands turned pitch black and shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng ignored the strength which was coming towards him, flashing forward as death stamps attacked the young man. Piss off, shouted the young man angrily. His oppressive strength surrounded Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng resisted using his physical strength. He moved lightning fast and raised his fist. Death Dao and death stamps pounded at him. You really want to die, shouted that young man furiously. He punched out and his energies turned into a cage. He wanted to prevent Lin Feng from moving away. The atmosphere around them turned into a dark world. Sword energies appeared, mighty punches collided loudly. The pitch-black hand exploded. Lin Feng shouted, and lightning swords appeared, holes appeared in the sky around them. A terrifying death holy spirit smashed into his opponent and corroded his life, turning his face gray. He shouted furiously as his body turned into a black ox king. The atmosphere became oppressive around him, but Lin Feng landed in front of him. He raised his fist and punched the ox violently. Blood splashed everywhere, astonishing everyone. How brutal and explosive. He's scary, whispered the crowd. That human strength was more explosive than a beast's. Chapter 2244. Invitation. After Lin Feng punched his opponent, the latter fell from the sky, reeling. Everybody was surprised because the ox had a terrifying physical strength. He was an ox after all. The crowd thought that Miss Bai had a good sense of judgment after all. Lin Feng was really impressive. He didn't need to use his cauldron to be extremely strong physically and could easily defeat a great imperial beast who was considered as a genius. The crowd was astonished. Do you have anything to say? Bai Yu asked the ox indifferently. She had anticipated the result of the battle earlier. The gigantic ox frowned and said hoarsely, since Miss Bai can go to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory, I can go too. I don't need to go with you, Miss Bai. I'm sure we'll meet again. After that, he turned into a human again and left, feeling ashamed and humiliated. The other young people left too. Only Bai Yu and Qing Yi were left behind. Qing Yi asked Bai Yu, Miss Bai, are we getting ready to go now? Yes, Bai Yu nodded. Who are we going to look for first? Qing Hai's rock. Even though you don't know where he is, I do. In your nest, with Princess Qing Hai, replied Bai Yu evenly. Qing Yi was surprised and pulled a long face. Qing Hai's rock was with Princess Qing Hai? Qing Yi liked Princess Qing Hai, it wasn't a secret. Many people knew that. But Princess Qing Hai wasn't interested in him, and now Qing Hai's rock was with her. How could he be happy about that? You others, stay here and protect the lake, said Bai Yu to the other people left behind. Her figure flickered as she left. Only one girl whom Bai Yu had invited came with them, the maid she had talked about. She was a substitute like Qing Yi. Of course, in case Bai Yu needed her, she would also be able to help. Lin Feng and Qing Yi followed along. However, Qing Yi unconsciously glanced at Lin Feng. He was a substitute, and if he had the chance, he would be able to replace the human. He had seen how strong Lin Feng was a moment before. He wouldn't be able to compete with the 5 others, but if he seized an opportunity, he might be able to replace Lin Feng. Qing Hai was a vast sea, and there were many palaces under the water. In one of the palaces, 2 people were snuggling. The young man was seated on a throne. He looked sharp and was wearing a cyan robe. Each time he moved, a mysterious qi appeared around him. He looked like a great scholar respected for learning and integrity. He resembled nature itself. On his laps was a woman. Even though she looked extremely strong, she also looked like a docile and gentle little girl. When will you propose a marriage alliance to my father? Asked the beautiful woman at that moment. The young man gazed into the distance. He looked extraordinary. He said, wait until I break through to the Tiandi layer. Then, I'll propose a marriage alliance immediately. That way, nobody will be able to refuse. All right, agreed the woman. It's just that Qing Yi is pestering me. He keeps courting me. I'm not interested in him at all. Ignore him, said the young man indifferently. At that moment, he suddenly raised his head and noticed something in the sea. Who's there? The water opened itself. He turned into a beam of light and rose up into the water at speed, carrying the woman with him. He crossed a distance of several thousands of meters in the blink of an eye and saw some people. Bai Yu Qing Yi, the young man frowned and asked coldly, what do you want? As expected. When Qing Yi saw the woman with the young man, his face turned deathly pale. He clenched his fists. He wanted to be with that woman. Many people in Qing Hai agreed with him. But now it was impossible. He would never have a chance again because she was with that guy now. When the woman saw Qing Yi, she pressed her body against her boyfriend and smiled widely. Qing Hai's rock, I want to invite some people to come to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. Do you want to come with me? Asked Bai Yu. She wasn't the kind of person who spoke around a point. King of the 10,000 beasts territory. Qinghai's rock's eyes twinkled and he asked, "Who else is going?" "A few people, Heezy's Maharaga, dark golden-pupiled king, Zishu's flood dragon, Dinua's sword," answered Baiyu. Qinghai's rock remained silent for a few seconds and said, "When?" "We're gathering now and then we're leaving," said Baiyu. Qinghai's rock took out a jade talisman. Baiyu understood. She took out a jade talisman as well. They exchanged a thread of godly awareness. "When you're ready, call me and I'll come," said Qinghai's rock calmly. Neither of them talked for nothing. "All right, goodbye," replied Baiyu. They left as quickly as they had arrived. Qingyi's muscles were still twitching. He clenched his fists powerlessly. In Heezy, Baiyu and the others arrived above a black hut. Lin Feng looked at that black hut and sensed a strong wind. It was sharp and stinky. His blood started boiling, and his hair bristled at the stench. "That's a powerful poison," thought Lin Feng. Some people came outside, and energies emerged from the black hut. Lin Feng released sharp sword lights. At the same time, Baiyu took out her zither and started playing her melodies transcendental. The energies continued emerging from the black hut, still smelling badly. "Buddy, are you coming to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory or not?" asked Baiyu. The black fog stopped and dispersed at that moment, and a Maharaga slowly appeared in the doorway. He slithered over to them. His eyes were filled with poisonous energies, and he kept hissing. "Explain," said Heezy's Maharaga indifferently. "I've invited Qinghai's rock. I'm about to invite the dark golden-pupiled king, Zishu's flood dragon, and Dinua's sword. Are you coming?" asked Baiyu straightforwardly. Heezy's Maharaga hissed, his eyes twinkled, and he said, "When you're sure, send someone to inform me." Then he disappeared in black fog, like he had never appeared. "He's so rude, arrogant, and overbearing," swore Qing. Then he realized he better shut up. "Next one," said Baiyu indifferently. She already had 2 people, 3 more to go. They went into another sea. Baiyu quickly found Zishu's flood dragon. He was a flood dragon with purple antennae, looking sly and dangerous. He immediately accepted. The dark golden-pupiled king was practicing cultivation in a volcano. Baiyu found him anyway. She had prepared everything and could easily find everyone. The dark golden-pupiled king accepted too. The last one was Dinua's sword. Lin Feng gazed into the distance and saw a mountain. At first glance, he saw nobody. After a few hours, still nothing or nobody. Finally, Baiyu lost patience. Why was he wasting time? "Are you coming to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory or not?" asked Baiyu straightforwardly. However, this time, nobody paid attention to her. Dinua's sword was there, gazing into the distance. "Is he practicing cultivation?" wondered Lin Feng. Dinua's sword looked ordinary, but he was bathing in a special qi. At first glance, he looked ordinary, but each time Lin Feng blinked and looked at him again, he had the impression he was looking at someone or something different. How extraordinary! Baiyu didn't say anything else useless. Dinua's sword was gazing into the distance. However, at that moment, Dinua's sword turned to Baiyu and said, "I'm coming." "We're all ready," said Baiyu. The 5 people had agreed. Nobody had refused. Nobody had talked nonsense. Chapter 2245. King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Since everybody was ready, Baiyu informed everyone else, and on the day after, they gathered together outside of the king of the 10,000 Beasts territory. "Old poisonous monster," said Qinghai's rock to Heezy's Maharaga coldly. "Little birdie, you're here too," said Heezy's Maharaga smiled. They knew each other. Heezy's Maharaga had been famous for a while, and when Qinghai's rock was young, people were already terror-stricken when they saw the former. Back then, he had almost killed Qinghai's rock. Then the latter had grown up, and they had stopped fighting. They were both dangerous, one was fast. "Dark golden-pupiled king," said Qinghai's rock, glancing at the dark golden-pupiled king. His eyes were dark and golden. He looked sly and strange. They had a similar bloodline, they both had rock blood and thus both were fast. However, apart from rock blood, the dark golden-pupiled king also had blue-green bird's blood, so he was even faster. How exciting! You're all here, said Zishu's flood dragon. All those beasts were terrifying people. If people from the 8 great imperial animal cities saw this, they would be amazed. Dinua's sword looked calm and serene, completely ordinary. However, the others kept some distance. Those 5 people were all terrifyingly strong, and they were all vigilant. Even though they were self-confident, they didn't dare underestimate people who were as famous as themselves, including Bai Yu. However, they ignored Lin Feng, Qing Yi, and Bai Yu's maid. They didn't even look at them. They only paid attention to the few great emperors who were already there and people who were stronger. Alright, get ready. We're going to enter King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. The people there are crazy, said Bai Yu calmly at that moment. Hee, let's go and have some fun. I've heard that the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory is divided into several small powerful groups. Weak beasts keep fighting chaotically. Bai Yu, your father came here a short time, how was it? Asked Qinghai's rock. Not just anyone dared go to the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Inside, there were many terrifying, cunning, and cruel beasts. Bai Yu had decided to ignore all those young people who had potential to go to the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory, opting for Qinghai's rock and the others instead. We'll know how it is once we're inside. You won't be disappointed, said Bai Yu calmly. Heezy's Maharaga hissed and said, since it's that way, let's go. I can't wait to see what it's like inside, and finally, I found some people to go there with me. Perfect. It won't be easy inside. Let's go and we'll see, said Dinua indifferently. He slowly walked towards the door. They crossed the door and disappeared. They reappeared in a place where bestial qi hummed and filled the air. The atmosphere was thick and oppressive. Many people stared at them as soon as they entered. So many beasts, thought Lin Feng. He was surprised. The atmosphere was taut and ready to explode with violence. Suddenly, beasts roared, and his hairs bristled. He felt unsafe. Since we're here, be careful. Otherwise, we'll be like them and we'll never come out, Bai Yu advised plainly. Lin Feng's face stiffened, now realizing how dangerous this place was. They could get stuck inside. However, they had accepted Bai Yu's invitation without hesitation, and the 5 strong cultivators had wanted to go there for some time already. They had just never found anyone to come with them. It was why they had accepted immediately. For them, cultivators at the top of the Di-Chi layer, it was difficult to find enemies who were as strong as them. This place was an opportunity. Everybody nodded agreement and continued walking. This was the legendary King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. According to legends, battles were bloody and difficult on the periphery, but cultivators had to go through those fierce battles to get to the central part of the territory. Bestial qi became more and more intense. They heard some birds flapping their wings. They were all emperors, powerful, with gigantic wings, frozen in some half-human, half-beast forms. I've heard that there were many terrifying beasts in the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. It wasn't a lie. The great imperial beasts behind them must be their leaders, said the dark golden-pupiled king, looking far into the distance. Let's go and kill the great imperial beasts, said Qinghai's rock calmly. He opened his cyan wings and slowly rose up into the air before shooting ahead. How fast, murmured Lin Feng when he saw Qinghai's rock leave. There were tens of thousands of beasts there. Lin Feng hadn't imagined there were such places. It was an ocean of beasts. Pitch-black claws moved towards Qinghai's rock. However, he was too fast. He opened his beak, sharp cyan lights emerged, and in the blink of an eye, he destroyed an ocean of beasts. Interesting. Heezy's Maharaga laughed. He also moved forwards. He spat poison far into the distance. His poison invaded all the imperial beasts who got too close and destroyed them. They fell from the sky one after another. The dark golden-pupiled king also rose up into the air, his eyes shining. A strong wind swept across the area, the atmosphere became distorted, and it started raining blood. Beasts' corpses fell from the sky, one after another. Dinua also rose up into the air, and a sword streaked across the sky. He killed all the beasts in his way. Lin Feng watched calmly. There was an ocean of beasts, but these posed no threat to them. Those 5 people were too strong. For those 5 beasts, this place was like the celestial country for Lin Feng. Chapter 2246. Avenging Spirit. Lin Feng and the others wouldn't have been able to resist against thousands of beasts attacking them at the same time, but they were extremely fast, especially Qing Hai's rock. He was a great emperor and his speed was unparalleled. In the crowd, no attack reached him. Each time he flapped his wings, many birds fell from the sky. Heezy's Maharaja kept spitting out poison clouds around many imperial beasts, and each time his poison exploded, they rotted to death and fell from the sky. The beasts roared furiously. Lin Feng's death strength surged. Millions of threads of death stamps and deployment lights swept everything away. Beasts kept falling from the sky. Die! Lin Feng's eyes were filled with death strength. He looked at a beast, and that beast died instantly. One glance and he could kill imperial beasts. At the same time, he continued releasing death lights. No beast could stop him. The 9 cultivators were a terrifying force. Very quickly, there were tens of thousands of corpses on the ground, forming small hills. Blood rivers quickly appeared around those mountains of corpses. We just entered and the first wave of beasts was so impressive, I wonder what awaits us, mused Lin Feng and the others even though they had done pretty well already. They didn't relax. On the contrary, they were even more vigilant. This was just the beginning. If the simple soldiers in these armies of beasts were already this terrifying, how strong would the leaders be? Bai Yu, before Great Emperor Bai died, he came here. However, do you think we can really succeed and get to the king of the 10,000 beast territory? The dark golden-pupiled king asked Bai Yu at that moment. Since we're here, we'll see, replied Bai Yu indifferently. They continued moving forwards, following Bai Yu. After a short time, they arrived in a foreboding place. There was nothing on the land at all. There were millions of dead strong cultivators on the ground, but there was no beast in sight. Sometimes the group noticed fires, but otherwise, nothing. They could sense resentment and hatred. What the hell is this place? A ghost place? Asked Qing Yi, feeling cold and scared. He had the impression he was facing an army of ghosts. Shouldn't we make a detour? You can take a detour by yourself, replied Bai Yu, without even glancing at him. Qing Yi's grimaced. He had to control his fear and follow along. This place just seemed extremely dangerous. They continued moving forwards. The resentment and hatred seemed to be intensifying as they moved forwards. They even saw some lights moving under their feet. What the hell's is going on? Said Heezy's Maharaja, spitting out poison chi. The white lights instantly disappeared. Maybe there are avenging spirits here. There could be a monumental number of them, mused Dinua carelessly. The others shivered. Avenging spirits? Qing Yi shouted. White lights crawled up on his body, and he was covered by them. Piss off, he shouted, releasing bestial chi. An invisible and intangible light crawled up his body. A blade appeared, and strong wind started blowing. The white lights slowly disappeared. However, strange white lights appeared in Qing Yi's eyes. Die! Shouted Qing Yi, closing his eyes. He seemed to be fighting inside of his head. After a short time, he reopened his eyes. He looked normal, save that his eyes still looked strange. Evil avenging spirits. They're terrifying. They want to devour our minds. Be careful, whispered Qing. Everybody knew they had to be careful. They continued walking forwards. Each time they took a step, lights twinkled. As they moved forwards, the white lights grew faster and more intense. Lin Feng sensed that many invisible and intangible avenging spirits wanted to penetrate into his body and occupy his brain. Lin Feng's heart was suddenly filled with resentment and hatred. He wanted to kill. He was depressed, furious, and unhappy. The invisible and intangible strength was influencing him. Piss off, shouted Lin Feng. His body turned gray. He released death stamps inside his own body. His Dao power destroyed the avenging spirits instantly. They could not resist his Dao power. Lin Feng and the others gradually sped up. However, that place was vast and boundless. Even if we kill all the avenging spirits, The resentment and hatred will still influence us, thought Lin Feng. At that moment, a terrifying white avenging spirit penetrated into his brain, and he immediately released his soul. Piss off! Using his soul, Lin Feng bombarded the avenging spirit with death stamps. However, the avenging spirit just howled furiously. Surprisingly, it spat out an incredible amount of resentment and hatred strength, which collided against his death strength. At the same time, the ghost released more resentment and hatred strength which drove into Lin Feng's brain. Lin Feng shivered. Death stamps surrounded the resentment and hatred strength and pierced through the avenging spirit's invisible body. It wanted to destroy his soul. That ghost looked like a ghost king. Die! Lin Feng released Death Culpa swords. Lin Feng's soul had gone through a lot, and he had been cleansed by Devamara Culpa strength. His jet black Death Culpa swords were deadly. He slowly destroyed all the threads of resentment and hatred strength, and then they drove towards the avenging spirit. The avenging spirit howled furiously. It wanted to escape, but Lin Feng didn't let it flee. He released his godly awareness and his sky palace, as well as terrifying demon Culpa strength. They surrounded the ghost and instantly crushed it. The ghost exploded and turned into millions of lights. The threads of the ghost moved towards Lin Feng's brain again, including the threads of resentment and hatred strength. Lin Feng destroyed them again and took a deep breath. That avenging spirit was extremely strong. Apart from Lin Feng, Baiyu also got attacked by all sorts of avenging spirits. Even though they were now expecting it, it was getting more and more dangerous. At that moment, Lin Feng and the others suddenly gazed into the distance and saw gigantic white avenging spirits. Their resentment and hatred energies condensed, their eyes were empty and emotionless, and they were staring at Lin Feng and the others. The gigantic avenging spirits didn't only have human shapes, some of them also had animal shapes. White lights twinkled in their eyes. They looked extremely dangerous. So many avenging spirits. Hundreds of them, said Lin Feng, releasing Devamara Culpa strength. He had noticed that the avenging spirits didn't like that kind of strength. They were like us at the beginning, I suppose. And then avenging spirits occupied their brains and they turned into ghosts. If they managed to occupy our brains, we'd also turn into ghosts, said Baiyu. Everyone's faces stiffened, and they all released impressive energies solemnly. How exciting, said the dark golden-pupiled king coolly. He turned into a vortex, a strong wind condensed and turned into a hurricane. He moved towards a gigantic avenging spirit in front of him, and the avenging spirit instantly disappeared. How strong, the dark golden-pupiled king is really gifted, that must be one of his innate powers, thought Lin Feng. Talent was carved into Lin Feng's genetic code. It was probably the same for the dark golden-pupiled king. Dino also attacked. He waved his hands and swords filled the air. They turned into beam of lights, and he destroyed avenging spirits one after another. He looked extremely calm and serene throughout the process. However, his strength was explosive. Qing Yi was looking at the 5 cultivators in front of him. Qing Hai's rock, Heezi's Maharaga, the dark golden-pupiled king, Zishu's flood dragon, Dinua's sword, they were all terrifying. The difference between them and him was huge. An avenging spirit charged Qing Yi. Even though he was also a great emperor, the 5 others could easily kill the avenging spirits, but he couldn't. But since they were 9 people, they still managed to destroy all of the spirits and continue on. They killed hundreds and hundreds of avenging spirits. Nothing could stop them. They drew closer and closer to the central area of the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. Chapter 2247. Disappearance of strong cultivators. Finally, the 9 people saw an ancient door. However, between them and the door, everything was colored red. Out of that redness, a terrifying chi emerged that set their hairs on end. If we cross that area, we'll reach the real part of king of the 10,000 beasts territory, said Baiyu. Lin Feng and the others frowned. Finally, the legendary land, the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. What was there? They had heard that many terrifying ancient beasts gathered there. Apparently, it was a heaven for beasts. There were many legends about the area. At that moment, Lin Feng and the others looked enthusiastic. They had killed so many beasts to get this far. "What is this place?" whispered Qing Yi, gazing into the distance. Nothing had surprised them so far, but they remained vigilant. "Let's try and we'll see," said Qing Hai's rock, moving forwards. He flapped his wings and turned into a beam of light. When he entered the redness, it felt like he had flown into moving sands. He was flying much slower. He could barely flap his wings. He frowned. Lin Feng and the others looked worried. "What is this place?" repeated Heezy's Maharaga. The redness in the air turned into an invisible and intangible strength which kept attacking Qing Hai's rock. But that kind of strength didn't seem to be caused by someone, it was inherent to this place. Condensation of ancient dead animals' intent. "Their Tao and intent is here," said Qing Hai's rock. Suddenly, the air began to hum. He was suddenly surrounded by cyan lights, and moved to destroy them instantly. Qing Hai's rock is extremely fast. That kind of strength can't really stop him. Zishu's flood dragon also started flying ahead. The air began to rumble and shake. When he penetrated into that strength, he suddenly started moving slower as well. He shouted loudly and struck out as hard as he could. He even managed to move faster than Qing Hai's rock. Oh, he's relying on strength. A kind of strength is slowing Qing Hai's rock and Zishu's flood dragon down. Because Zishu's flood dragon is really strong, he has an advantage here. Bai Yu and the others also entered the red area, including Lin Feng. After entering the area, Lin Feng sensed a terrifying strength surround him. It was extremely heavy, and made his soul tremble. Great imperial beast's thoughts penetrated into his body, and his body suddenly felt numb. He had the impression he had the whole world on his shoulders. No wonder, it was composed of Tao's strength and intent. Lin Feng jumped ahead, surrounded by demon lights, his eyes pitch black. Nothing could corrode his body. A red beam of light shot towards him, attacking his soul. "Piss off!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. He released Death Culpa swords, which attacked the ray and destroyed it. However, he didn't relax. These red energies were dangerous. The 9 cultivators pressed forward with an indomitable will. It was difficult, but nobody flinched. "What is this place? How come there are such terrifying energies here? Do they really come from dead animals?" wondered Lin Feng, but it was just for a second before he refocused on the path. Dinua's sword was the first one to get close to the door. When he arrived in front of it, he immediately crossed it and disappeared. Zishu's flood dragon roared furiously, the earth and sky shaking around him. He destroyed all the energies in his way and reached the ancient door. After that, the dark golden-pupiled king, Qing Hai's rock, Heezy's Maharaga, Bai Yu, Lin Feng and the others also arrived. Nothing stopped them. When Lin Feng crossed the door, he appeared on a platform. He wasn't alone, Bai Yu and the others were there too. Lin Feng was speechless, because there were people everywhere. They looked at Lin Feng and the others and seemed amused. Lin Feng sensed something. He followed the crowd's gazes and saw a curtain of light. On it, Qing Yi, Bai Yu and her maid appeared. Their journey through the red area flashed up on the light screen, and everybody could see how much they had struggled. Lin Feng's face stiffened. Had the crowd been watching their journey from the beginning to the end? Lin Feng glanced around. It was a beast city, an animal world. There were animal buildings everywhere. The buildings had all sorts of shapes. Some of them had the shape of an ox, thousands of meters high. Some had the shapes of apes, some of dragons. There were gigantic beasts in the air, bats, eagles, great rocks, dragons with long black wings, all of them looking in their direction. This is the real king of the 10,000 beasts territory. It's an animal heaven, thought Lin Feng. His heart was pounding. Qing Hai's rock and the others were also stupefied at this reception. "Little boy, you're here too," exclaimed a voice at that moment. Qing Hai's rock was surprised and turned around. There was a middle-aged man there, wearing a cape. When Qing Hai's rock saw him, he was astonished and blurted out, "You're Uncle Ox?" "Indeed. You're a grown-up now. You've become extremely strong. Your parents must be proud of you." said the middle-aged man. He had 2 horns on his head and was smiling gently. Qinghai's rock had known him since he was a child. Qinghai's rock's father had good relations with the ox. Now, Qinghai's rock had met him in the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. "Uncle Ox, what are you doing here?" said Qinghai's rock, looking confused. "Not only me. Your father is here too," said the middle-aged man patiently. Qinghai's rock's expression changed. He trembled and asked, "My father is alive?" "Of course, did you think he was dead? He's here, and on top of that, he's an officer here," said the middle-aged man calmly. Qinghai's rock trembled. "Since it's that way, why didn't he come to see me?" Qinghai's rock didn't understand. He was perplexed. The middle-aged man smiled and shook his head. "It's the king of the 10,000 beasts territory here." "You poisonous vermin, here we meet again," said someone else. This time, Heezy's Maharaga was astonished, staring at a figure. That person looked horrible. He had pustules all over and he looked terrifying. "It's you. You disappeared 200 years ago, and now you're here," exclaimed Heezy's Maharaga, staring at that person. His heart was pounding. The person was extremely strong. Even though he wasn't very talented, he was an extremely strong warrior. "Indeed. I came here 200 years before you. You old poisonous vermin, you're so slow," said the one who looked horrible with a smile. "You old monster, you're a celestial emperor. When did you break through to the Tiandi layer?" asked Heezy's Maharaga. Over 150 years ago." "Surprisingly, you haven't broken through," replied that person, laughing loudly. He looked amused. Heezy's Maharaga pulled a long face. "Over 150 years? How strong? What is this place, exactly?" asked Heezy's Maharaga. He was annoyed. That beast used to be as strong as him in the past, and now he had broken through 150 years ago. "King of the 10,000 beasts territory. You will love it here," that person smiled. Heezy's Maharaga's heart was pounding. Bai Yu and the others glanced around. Back then, many beasts disappeared from the 8 great imperial animal cities. Did they come here? The dark golden-pupiled king to the crowd. In the outside world, many people had heard of cultivators who had died, but actually, they had come to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. But those were only legends. Now, however, the newcomers understood that many of those beasts hadn't actually died. Was it only a legend? According to legends, he's extremely old. But not many beasts have seen him for real. I've heard that this world is tens of thousands of years old already. Therefore, if the king of the 10,000 beasts really exists, he must be extremely old, maybe hundreds of thousands of years old, replied Bai Yu. Lin Feng took a deep breath. Hundreds of thousands of years? How impressive! Of course the king of the 10,000 beasts exists. Besides, you will also understand that he's not only the king here, he's the king of all animals in the world, said the ox with awe and veneration. The king of the 10,000 beasts was a sort of supreme god in his heart. They flew above many castles before arriving in front of a gigantic castle which had the form of a great rock. The great rock was bigger than many other buildings. Its sculpted wings were gigantic. It looked like a great rock which had been petrified and turned a real castle. The ox landed with the small group and entered the castle. There were many beasts inside, and many battle stages. There was an army of beasts wearing armor, too, all of them great rocks. Their eyes looked as sharp as eagle's eyes. Even in their human shapes, they had gigantic wings in their backs. They also had beaks which contained a sharp chi. Their beaks and wings were similar to those of Qinghai's rock and Qingyi. What a powerful army, thought Lin Feng quietly. The army of great rocks was formidable. The ordinary great rocks were all emperors at the top of the Huangqi layer. The officers were all great emperors. Lin Feng sensed a qi similar to Qinghai's rock's qi emerging from them. The king of the 10,000 beasts gathered many heroes. They're all incredible, obstinate, and unruly. Therefore, they have to have a powerful army to keep strong beasts under control. They're in charge of making sure that the rules are applied, no matter how strong you are. Even though many beasts come here, They all have to respect the rules. With your fighting abilities, you could all become small leaders, explained the ox. He walked over to a small group. Your father has the highest military rank in here. He has many divisions under his control. When 100 divisions are together, they form an army. A commander-in-chief leads them. Lin Feng and the others were impressed. Lin Feng asked, "How big is the king of the 10,000 beasts territory?" Bai Yu and the others looked excited. They also wanted to know how big it was. It has existed for a very long time. At the beginning, they were bored, but then more and more beasts came and they started expanding. Now, it's not a territory anymore, it's a world. A military faction consists of millions of beasts. The king of the 10,000 beasts personal army is composed of over 10,000 beasts. They are all the strongest heroes. Lin Feng shivered. This world had existed for hundreds of thousands of years and already had billions of beasts. Beasts lived for an extremely long time, especially the strongest ones. "Are there other worlds?" asked Bai Yu. "Of course. We're not in the outside world, everything is perfectly organized here. Because mortality rates are low, the armies become stronger and stronger, and the king of the 10,000 beasts has created rules. When people have children, they must go to other worlds, they can't keep in touch with their parents. Even officers can't break the rules. Only when they are strong enough can they return and meet again with their parents. Of course, they must want to come back. Sometimes, they enjoy the worlds in which they live." "What does the king of the 10,000 beasts want to do?" asked Lin Feng. "A perfect organization, a world composed of heroes, many strong cultivators, many worlds, very old place. Did the king of the 10,000 beasts want to create a world as big as the continent of the 9 clouds? That kind of organization reminded Lin Feng of hell, rules, officers. Had the king of the 10,000 beasts world become as wide as hell, though? "How many worlds are there?" asked Qinghai's rock. "We'll see. You'll also become a member of this world." "We're here," said the ox at that moment. They arrived in front of a golden great rock building. It was spectacular. Did the king of great rocks live in there? "Officer Rock," said the ox at that moment, the army of great rocks recognizing him and letting him pass. "Brother Ox," replied a voice. A strong wind started blowing. A dignified and majestic middle-aged man appeared in front of them. He looked very similar to Qinghai's rock. However, his chi was sharper. When he saw Qinghai's rock, his eyes looked even sharper. "Father," said Qinghai's rock when he saw that person. "Good little boy. No wonder you're my son. You're here too," said the middle-aged man, laughing loudly. All the great rocks in the area trembled. His voice was so loud. And his son was here? Incredible. "Father, I thought you were dead, but actually you were here." "You never told me why?" asked Qinghai's rock. "I didn't need to tell you. You were strong enough. I didn't need to protect you," said the officer loudly and firmly. Chapter 2249. Dreamlike life. Qinghai's rock was stupefied and could only nod. "What about mother? Where is she?" "She's dead. She died in war," said the officer calmly, like he was talking about something ordinary. Qinghai's rock's heart started pounding. Don't think about it. She's dead. No need to miss her. Work hard and become stronger. That way, you'll become an officer like me. You'll avenge your mother," said the officer to Qinghai's rock coldly. "Who killed her?" asked Qinghai's rock. "I'll tell you when the right time comes," said officer firmly. Qinghai's rock asked, "I'm going to king of the 10,000 beast city, how is it there?" "Since you came here, you'll go to king of the 10,000 beast city, obviously." "I'll take you there," said the officer. He snapped open his gigantic wings. The crowd sensed a terrifying wind carrying them along. After a short time, they arrived in front of a door. "That's a teleportation portal. It can take you to the gates of king of the 10,000 beast city." "There will be a few gates," said the officer. Lin Feng and the others nodded and entered the door. They appeared in another world with 7 doors before them. 7 doors. "Bai Yu, was that why you wanted 7 people to come?" asked Qing Yi to Bai Yu. "I just knew that my father faced 7 doors. I will investigate his death." Therefore, when we come out, we'll share what we discover, all right? Bai asked Lin Feng and the others. We'll talk about that when we come out, said Heezy's Maharaga. His eyes twinkled. His old friend had surpassed him 150 years ago. He wanted to see what there was in King of the 10,000 Beast City. His figure flickered, and he entered a door. Let's go in first, said Qinghai's rock. His figure flickered as well, choosing another door. The dark golden-pupiled king also chose another door. There were 7 doors. Bai's plan was 1 person, 1 door. If an incident occurred, she would have gone in with her maid, but the 9 of them were safe and sound, so they needed a solution. Lin Feng walked over to one of the doors. To his surprise, a vortex appeared and surrounded him. No, Lin Feng stopped, his soul was being absorbed. His soul seemed to travel across space and time. Lin Feng's soul was outside his body. However, he realized that struggling was useless. He felt tiny and powerless. A celestial path. Continent of the 9 clouds, you created a world, a king's path, said a voice in Lin Feng's mind. He trembled as an old man appeared in front of him. He was wearing a king's robe and had the demeanor of a transcendent being. He looked extraordinary, like a peerless cultivator. Who are you? Shouted Lin Feng. However, his voice was barely audible. Lin Feng continued trembling. He suddenly realized he was in a child's body and talking like a child. However, his soul was independent. He wasn't one with the child's body, he was just stuck in it. And just before, the child had spoken. Who are they? What's wrong with King of the 10,000 Beast City? Lin Feng didn't understand what was going on. The man in front of him nodded and petted his head. He smiled and said, Little Tian, you will go to the continent of the 9 clouds and become a king. Those are your teacher's teachings. Bear them in mind, said a voice. The child smiled innocently. Then, he hugged the middle-aged man and taught the child about cultivation. Lin Feng had the impression he was personally on the scene. Lin Feng had the impression time passed quickly. He was growing up. He traveled in the continent. He had furious battles. Little Tian killed millions of strong cultivators, and suddenly, he didn't look like a child anymore, he looked like someone who had gone through lots of hardships in life. Phew! Little Tian walked into the distance. He practiced cultivation. He saw his teacher. He looked mature and cold. When he saw his teacher, he suddenly looked like a child again. His teacher loved him and taught him all he could. Time passed, little Tian was growing older and older. Lin Feng didn't know how many years had passed. He lost the notion of time. It looked fake and real at the same time. Was he little Tian? He shared everything with him. Today, little Tian became a great emperor. However, he was crying in the middle of a crowd, holding a beautiful woman in his arms. He loved her, but he hadn't managed to save her. He was crying blood. Finally, he put the woman at the top of a mountain and looked at the crowd savagely. He started killing them. A river of blood started flowing down the mountain. From that moment, he started acting coldly, even in front of the most beautiful women in the world from the pain in his heart. However, no matter what, when he went back home, he was always happy, and warmth always filled his heart, like Lin Feng when he went back to Yangzhou City. Little Tian grew up, becoming stronger and stronger. He faced many difficulties and had insane battles. Each time Lin Feng felt nervous, like he had lived little Tian's life in real time. But at the same time, he understood that to become a peerless cultivator, he had to go through such things, no matter whether someone was good or evil. One day, little Tian built his own world. Many people respected him. He already looked a bit old. His eyes were filled with stars of wisdom. Another time, little Tian finally got married. He hadn't forgotten his first love, but he loved his new wife too. He had already become a saint emperor. He had a wife and descendants. Time passed, and little Tian had many grandchildren. He was old and at the top of the Xingdi layer. Finally, little Tian did all he could to break through, and he did. He had his own world, and he created a terrifying spell. On that day, he went back to his family. Teacher. The middle-aged man looked old now. Chapter 2250, 81 lives after that, little Tian didn't die. He killed his teacher. He saw his teacher's desperate look, but he looked indifferent. He had no emotions anymore. He had been betrayed by the person he respected the most. He had done all his teacher had asked him. He had taken risks. He had shown him all his memories. However, the old man had attacked him. It was a true tragedy. Life was cruel. He had become cold and indifferent, apathetic. His teacher's love had become an illusion. He had created a saint's technique, and then he had killed his teacher. However, he wasn't excited at all. He was just sad and felt nostalgic. That wasn't the reason why he had decided to break through. It wasn't the reason why he had gone through so much. Suddenly, the illusion dispersed. Lin Feng suddenly felt much more relaxed. Little Tian raised his head and looked at Lin Feng's soul. Lin Feng's heart was trembling. Did little Tian know he existed? What had just happened? What do you think about my life? Little Tian asked Lin Feng's soul. He sounded indifferent. Lin Feng's heart was pounding. He hadn't had time to calm down. He had just lived someone else's entire life. How moving and touching, sighed Lin Feng. He had experienced little Tian's life from the beginning to the end. He had experienced his life as a baby and grown old with him. How could Lin Feng remain stoic? Who are you? Lin Feng asked little Tian. You arrived in my territory, and you ask me who I am? Asked little Tian calmly. Lin Feng took a deep breath. He wasn't wrong. He had guessed right. Little Tian was the king of the 10,000 beasts. However, why wasn't he a beast? You're strange. Why isn't the king of the 10,000 beasts a beast? Maybe you would be surprised if you saw what was behind those doors, said little Tian calmly. He knew what Lin Feng was thinking. Who said the king of the 10,000 beasts had to be a beast? You're a human, but you're here, right? Said the king of the 10,000 beasts, answering his own question. Everything was natural. He said calmly. Of course, when the king of the 10,000 beasts was a beast, perhaps his life was different from what you could experience or feel, but it's also true. A life is a life. It's the life of the king of the 10,000 beasts in any case. How many lives has the king of the 10,000 beasts had? Asked Lin Feng. He didn't understand. The king of the 10,000 beasts has lived many lives, said little Tian calmly. He didn't look sad or hopeless anymore. Lin Feng had the impression he was hallucinating. A moment ago, it had felt like he had been sad and hopeless, not the king of the 10,000 beasts. Why did you create king of the 10,000 beast city? Why do you make people come here? Why do you make people go through what you have lived? Asked Lin Feng, trying to calm down. I want people to understand what the life of a strong cultivator looks like. I want them to understand that sometimes, what you try to have in life can only be an illusion. Your world can collapse anytime. I want them to understand what a life is, said little Tian slowly. Just like you, that life has had an incredible impact on you. So what? Asked Lin Feng calmly. So, you'll be even more determined in the future and stronger. You made many worlds, which comprise the king of the 10,000 beasts world. Why? Asked Lin Feng. To understand my life. At least, you understand that no matter how strong someone is, including peerless cultivators, they can drift and live without purpose, or drag out an ignoble existence. They cry too. Everyone has similar feelings, answered the king of the 10,000 beasts. He slowly turned around and looked at the sky, continuing evenly, nobody should be arrogant. Everybody is the same when they die. Everyone becomes ordinary when they die. When you reach the top, your existence can be meaningless. Lin Feng looked at the king of the 10,000 beasts back. His heart was pounding. No wonder the beasts admired him. He was humble, an extraordinary being, but he was not arrogant. It was his conception, his perception. It applied to everyone though, whether they accepted it or not. After hearing such stories, people did their best to progress. They were determined, but they didn't take themselves too seriously. Who do you want to sacrifice? The supreme animal world? The imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds? All the shrines? Asked Lin Feng. The king of the 10,000 beasts was startled, and cold lights flashed in his eyes. He turned around and looked at Lin Feng. Since you've had many lives, little Tian is one of your lives. It's not your current body, which means that you're much stronger now. You want to control them. You want to control everything, said Lin Feng casually. The king of the 10,000 beasts was staring at Lin Feng. He looked surprised, but smiled and said, I like you. Before you, there was another guy I liked, Great Emperor Bai. Unfortunately, he wanted to control things too much. He didn't want to help me. But I'm convinced you can help me. Even if you're only at the top of the Huangqi layer, I can let you experience my 81 lives. I guarantee you that within 50 years, you'll become a saint emperor if you experience my 81 lives. 81 lives? You've had 81 lives? Lin Feng was astonished. How awesome! Each of his lives might have lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. The king of the 10,000 beasts had led 81 lives. He had reincarnated 81 times. His understanding of cultivation was probably terrifying. If Lin Feng experienced 81 lives, he would probably understand cultivation much better. Indeed, 81 lives. I can easily form an army of great emperors. A few hundreds of years are enough, not to mention that I've spent a long time here, said the king of the 10,000 beasts with a smile. Lin Feng found that kind of smile scary. The king of the 10,000 beasts probably knew a lot. Lin Feng had heard that there were some terrifying cultivators in the continent of the 9 clouds who had lived for as long as the king of the 10,000 beasts. Were they from the same era? Did he want to surpass those people? Were they competing? In the ancient days, some shrines had been destroyed, some others had been created, some others had risen. Was it like that in the king of the 10,000 beasts world? This world is way too complex and mysterious, thought Lin Feng. There were so many mysteries in the world. Little Tian had only seen the continent a little bit. He had lived a different life. He had chosen a different path. Alright, I will first let you experience 7 lives. You will understand a lot. If you want to assimilate, then learn slowly. There is no hurry, said the king of the 10,000 beasts patiently. Lin Feng sensed his soul shaking. The king of the 10,000 beasts was controlling his soul again. Chapter 2251. Another life. Lin Feng's soul went back into his body. However, at that moment, it felt like everything had changed in his life. He had experienced someone else's life, but it had felt so real, enough that he had the impression he had really lived that life. He couldn't forget those memories. Won't little Tian's life influence my own life? Thought Lin Feng. If he perceived that life as something that helped him improve on the path of cultivation, then it was good. But if he perceived it as his own, then it could be problematic. He wouldn't be Lin Feng then, he'd be a mixture of Lin Feng and little Tian. But it had been and still seemed so real. When his soul was in little Tian's body, he felt like he really was little Tian. However, Lin Feng didn't think about that too much. A terrifying, absorbing strength surrounded his body again. His soul was taken away once again. He left his body. Lin Feng understood that the king of the 10,000 beasts was making him experience another life. Lin Feng took a deep breath mentally. He hadn't even had time to assimilate one life, and he was already going to experience another one. Wouldn't Lin Feng forget who he was if he continued? Because he really had the impression that that life was his own. Snowflakes float around, a sword twinkles in the sunlight, said a voice at that moment. Lin Feng was standing in a snowy field in another body. He was performing a sword dance. Each time he used his sword, snowflakes floated around. The sun was shining, the snow kept glittering. It was a sword cultivator. He looked clean. He was a sword cultivator of the Zunqi layer, and already controlled several sorts of abstruse energies. Fellow disciple, said someone at that moment. Lin Feng saw a beautiful woman as white as snow, clean and beautiful. The young man smiled broadly when he saw her, as if his heart had melted. Fellow disciple, get ready. A dazzling sword moved towards the young man. He smiled and raised his sword. The two cultivators exchanged views on cultivation, both performing a sword dance. It was a beautiful scene. After that, they got tired and snuggled in the snow. The beautiful woman put her head on the young man's shoulder and smiled. Fellow disciple, our older fellow disciple is extremely talented. He wants to ask our teacher for a marriage alliance. The young man's face stiffened and turned pale. Finally, it was happening. Can't you ask our teacher for a few more years to wait for me? The young man knew he was weaker than his older fellow disciple, but he was determined to become stronger for his female fellow disciple. How many years? I will surpass our older fellow disciple within 5 years, said the young man. He looked determined. The young woman smiled, kissed him on the forehead, and said while leaving, "Leave the mountain, I will definitely wait for you for 5 years." He asked about them everywhere. In the end, he learned that she had gotten married to a descendant of the Yong city's leader, and that she was considered the most beautiful woman of the city. In Yong City, a gigantic city, he saw his female junior fellow disciple. She was heartbroken. She told him she had almost died once. Because her husband had begged unceasingly, she had accepted becoming his wife. However, she still loved him. She had had the best moments of her life with him. She remembered when they used to exchange views on cultivation. She remembered their romance. But in the end, she left. The young man was furious and determined to wipe out Yong City, regardless of the price. He slowly became demonic and dedicated his whole life to sword cultivation. He sacrificed everything he had to become a stronger sword cultivator. He killed millions of people. He didn't know what love was anymore. Time passed, many strong cultivators rose, many also fell. The young man went back to Yong City. He had changed already, he wasn't like in the past. He started killing millions of people in Yong City. On that day, he saw his elder fellow disciple, who had become a terrifying cultivator. Their eyes met with hatred. Apart from them, there were also some other terrifying cultivators, their female junior fellow disciple's husband, the current leader of Yong City, and an evil cultivator. They didn't say anything, they just had a monstrous battle. Rivers of blood flowed in Yong City. Mountains of corpses were piled high. Finally, the young man won. He killed everyone. Fellow disciple. His female junior fellow disciple had become a symbol of peerless grace and elegance. She looked at him, feeling sad, but she also had affection for him. The young man looked calm and serene. He looked at her, not saying anything. Suddenly, a sword shot towards her and pierced through her chest. Her face turned deathly pale. She looked crushed, sad, and hopeless. She asked, "Why?" The young man gazed into the distance. Everything was destroyed around them. He looked apathetic about it all. "You were too strong," said the young man flatly. He already had white hair on his temples. He looked emotionless. "You shouldn't be that strong." And our older fellow disciple, I understood him. He looked me in the eyes, his eyes were filled with hatred. And our teacher, he hurt me back in the days, he was furious, I knew why, said the young man calmly. The woman smiled and said, "So you knew, so why did you kill our older fellow disciple?" "I don't care. I dedicated half of my life to you." However, in the end, I realized it was useless to keep thinking about it because I had forgotten about it long ago, the young man said indifferently. Sword energies filled the air and cut apart everything. He didn't spend too much time explaining. Why would he?